Okay, cool. We're live. So
All right.
before we get like fully into this, I'm curious if you think that. Well, I guess I'll tell you what I think, and then you can tell me what you think about what I think. I
Sure.
think that the reason that Vosh left wasn't because he thought the debate was so vile that he had to leave. I think that it finally clicked in Vosh's head that this, if he continues to engage with this, especially if he continues to engage with it honestly, people are going to be mad at him. So he's just like, this isn't good for me. I got to get out of here. And the best way to present that, audience wise, is to say, like, I'm grossed out by this. I'm going to get out of here. Do you think
So
that's the
I
case?
no. Given the statement that Mr. Girl made right before he left, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that I would agree with you that maybe it's not personal disgust being the reason he left because Vasha's an edgy dude and he's got a stomach for a lot. I think if anything, the reason was he became like, I mean, Vosh has kind of a reputation in the space for having some spicy takes and some interesting clip chimps and stuff like that. I think that he was concerned that he was getting baited into from someone from Destiny's community into getting clipped effectively. And I think that he just got to the point where the value of the conversation wasn't didn't meet the danger that he could just be clipped for like saying something.
That's
I
basically
could
what I
tell
was
he didn't
saying.
meet.
I'm saying he didn't think that it was good for him. It was a good look for him to keep going.
Um, I
Hey,
think
Big
there's a,
C.
I think there's a slight difference, but I guess if you say we agree, then I guess we agree.
Well, let me put it this way. I think he left for optics, because of optics. And I would
Sure.
say that being clipped out of context would be optics.
Well, I also think that the last thing that Mr. Girl said was a little bit iffy, sussy.
Well,
So, and
and
I probably would have left the conversation at that point too, regardless of what the optics were, because I would have been made personally uncomfortable by that.
okay. I guess I'll say one last thing about it, and if you want to respond to it, that's cool, and then we'll play it. So the reason why I think that is that Vosh spent an hour talking about this, and then all of a sudden was like, "You seem to have an awfully big interest in this subject. Like, you do too, motherfucker. You talked just as just as long as I did about this before. All of a sudden, you're like, you're weird for talking about this for this long, but not me. So I'm gonna leave." I thought that
So
was really weird.
yeah, so two things. Number one, they don't spend the entire conversation talking about it. It actually only comes up right in the end. I reviewed it earlier today and yesterday. It's a subject that comes up right at the end when they sort of run out of things to talk about in terms of ethics, because as I think will be displayed, either Mr. Girl doesn't seem to have a cohesive ethical system, or he doesn't know how to frame it. And number two, anytime that Vosh has ever talked about this subject, it has never been from the area of, I'll say, interest that Mr. Girl seems to approach it from. It has been either comparing it to the exploitation of like the child slave industry and saying if you're fine with one of these, then you should be fine with the other. Why do we make condemnations of one while the other is just as abusive towards children? Or it has been condemning right wingers for their consumption of lolly and that sort of thing.
Okay, fair enough. I have spent a good deal of time trying to piece together Mr. Grill's ethical framework because I don't think he. I
He
just don't
doesn't
think he,
establish it. He doesn't do a good job of establishing it in this convo, which, like I
it's
said
not
before
it's
you
not
started the
important to
stream,
him to
well,
have that fleshed out. I don't think he's read like a lot of like ethics or anything like that to be able to put it into words.
I think that it is important, like, period, because as you'll see in the debate, he can't answer some very basic questions about like condemning certain groups.
Oh, he just doesn't. He does. You'd be hard
Yeah,
pressed to have Mr. Grill condemn a group.
I have an issue with someone who can't condemn bad people.
Well, if your mission statement is to empathize with people that you disagree with, or who even do things that you don't want people to do, then it would be counterintuitive to
You
do
can
so.
empathize, as Vosh does say in this conversation, which we should probably get to. You can
Yeah,
empathize with the humanity underneath the terrible ideas.
sure.
And I just, from what I saw of the conversation and what we'll see, I don't think that he really established his mechanism for differentiating the two. And like I said, like you said, you've seen more of his stuff. You've probably pieced it together. I just don't think that he does a good job of establishing it within this conversation.
That's fair. I guess we'll see how much
I
we
guess we'll
differ.
see.
Yeah. By the way, Big C, super happy to see you here. Oh yeah, shit. Hang on. I have the whole thing. I have the tab muted because I always have my YouTube tab muted when I'm streaming.
Yeah,
And it
you
transfers
sound
to all
fine. What's
tabs.
I don't know. What's up with you?
up? Not much. We're playing Metroid Prime, which is a fun game. So,
Yeah,
in that respect,
I
things are
played
going
I played that a little bit when it came out, but
It's so funny
never
because
beat
I
the
loved
whole
this
thing.
game, but I was on the.
well.
I did just
I
beat
wasn't
up,
rooting for the guy playing
Metroid
it.
Dread though. That's pretty good.
We are we're struggling with it now.
Yeah,
As
those
an
games are
adult.
tough.
Metroid
Styling
Dread was 10 out of
on
10.
Our performance as a young one. Anyway, what do you have on your mind today?
Well, I suggest. Well, first of all, are we going into this with preconceptions of each other? I have preconceptions, of you,
Okay,
obviously.
so can
but
I ask you a
are-
question?
By all
Is
means.
the reason he asked that because his reputation was already sort of known at this point?
I think the reason he asked that is
framing.
because, from what I gather, this Mr. Girl is still really new. I think he's only talked to Roseworst prior to this.
Okay,
And I
gotcha.
think he is just super weirded out by streaming and streamers. And so he has this kind of conversation with people like a lot in the early days of him streaming. He'd also say like, "Are we looking at chat or no?" Things like that. Or like
Sure.
when he would first start talking to Destiny, he'd be like,
I
"Well,
never
I think
looked
it's
at chat."
important. I think it's important that we establish like what our relationship is before we talk." These are just the kind of like preambles that Mr. Grill does because like this is all really weird to him.
Right, sure.
Where are you? What's our relationship like right now?
Well, my
See?
only preconceptions of you were that you emailed me saying that our opinions might differ on the subjects of gender theory, BLM, and pedophilia, which
What are his
definitely,
positions
which
on
definitely
gender
has,
theory? Because that doesn't get discussed in this conversation.
So, Mr. Girl, I would say that Mr. Girl is wrong for the right reasons. Mr. Girl is, it's not as though he doesn't.
I'm
Mr.
not
Girl-
going to jump down your throat. Just
No, no,
say
no.
it. I
I'm
don't
just
care.
no. I'm not. I'm not struggling to say it in a way that's digestible for you.
Sure.
I'm just trying to make sure that I'm saying it, presenting the idea correctly because he
Okay.
has a more nuanced position than most people do. So he doesn't. He's not down for anybody getting surgeries. For his reasoning, pretty simple. It freaks him out. He would say that definitionally, if you're getting your dick cut off, that you are not mentally well and that you shouldn't be making medical decisions for yourself. Like, he said that people should stop you. He's like, if I wanted to chop my arm off, somebody should stop me from doing that. And that's pretty much the stance on surgery. Otherwise, he says that there's he does believe in gender dysphoria, but he blames he doesn't blame the person experiencing it. He blames the rest of society. He doesn't think the society puts too much stress on gender norms, so that people feel this way aren't able to just be themselves. And also things like the way that we treat women. Of course, a lot of women don't want to be women because society treats them like shit. Who would actually want to be a woman today? Especially if society's offering you a way to choose a different path. It would be very appealing because being a woman kind of sucks.
I won't deny that that we live in a patriarchal hell state. I just, from all the research I've done and the research I've been presented and heard offered in debates and things, doesn't really sound like it's much of a choice for these people as to whether or not they are the gender identity they claim to be. You know what I
No,
mean?
he doesn't disagree that gender dysphoria is a thing and that people don't experience it, but he's saying that it's other people's. He blames how people treat people experiencing it. That he's saying the reason why people feel the need to take hormones and get surgery is because other people are trying to enforce gender standards onto them. And if we didn't do that, there would be he believes that there'd be a significantly reduced portion of people that would feel the need to physically change themselves.
I guess it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing then, because to some extent, I mean, my pushback would be, well, I think that the reason that these individuals get gender affirming surgeries is because they want them and not because they're necessarily cared with,
Sure, but
whether or not other people want it for them. But I guess when you put it that way, it's like, well, why do they want them in the first place?
Right, that's what he's saying. They want them
Yeah.
in the first place because they can't just be who they are. They're not allowed to just love themselves the way they are. They have to do all this other stuff in order for society to accept them loving themselves
I just don't know if
or being able to love themselves.
I just don't know if the position, like, I think surgery is icky too, but I don't think that would cause me to, like, oppose gender affirming surgery. I mean,
Sure, like I said, I don't agree with him, but I think he's wrong for the right reasons.
no, yeah, I mean,
If you're gonna be wrong, take this stance.
I hesitate to say this, but I'd love to talk to him about it sometime because it sounds like a nuanced question.
You have an opportunity this Saturday. He has having Mr. Girl Hotline. I don't know if the Discord is taking open invites, but I can certainly get you in there if it's not.
Well, it may have to be in the future. I think my mother-in-law is coming to help us paint this Saturday.
Okay, well, if you end up being free around anytime between like 8 o'clock and midnight, or I guess 9 and 1 your time.
Oh, okay, sure. No, that might be different then. I'll see what I can do. I do work the next day, but yeah, no, that's definitely more feasible.
Yeah, he's pretty much willing to talk to anybody who wants to call in on that show. So I mean, it's not a bad idea to do. I can also send you like his transl culture panel. He's also very heavily annoyed with like online trans people or like trans activists
so am I,
that
let's
cancel
be
people.
real.
Sure, I think it's a really easy take to have. Although, if you have it, some people are going to say that you're transphobic for thinking that, which is just muddies the words.
Those are the annoying trans people online, see. But there
You
are
know?
also annoying cis people online, so I just feel like there's
And there's also annoying cis people online doing the quote-unquote transl culturing as well. Or
Yeah, no,
canceling.
that's what I was meaning. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a trans exclusive thing. The people are shit all over. But anyways, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. I guess, just real quick, it always makes me think of seeing like black content creators getting really mad at white people for calling something racist, and they're like, "This is fine. Shut up. Like, I don't need you doing this for me."
I mean, depending on what it is, but I definitely see on average a bit more fragility coming from certain black content creators. Not all of them. I'm a big fan of Shark Zero myself.
Sure, I've just seen a lot of those clips where they're just like, white people need to chill out about racism, like calling people racist. Like, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah,
I'm fine
no,
with
the
everything.
white
I'm fine with everything that just happened
The
here.
white savior complex is, yeah.
Yeah, that
which
kind of vibe.
definitely elicits some preconceptions, I've got to say. A bit of curiosity.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. It was a saucy way to introduce myself.
Well, hit me up with your introduction then, in an entirely different way then.
Okay, so I'm Mr. Girl. Some of you may remember my Cuties review. I think that's the thing I'm most well known for last year.
Oh, son of a bitch! Yeah, I remember that.
It got me banned from YouTube for
I
4 months.
actually, okay, so I do remember hearing about that. I didn't know that it was him.
Yeah.
Because I watched VGGer at the time.
You know, it actually makes me pretty mad that people got that upset about, because like I've seen recently, like comedians and stuff will make jokes or even just like observations. Like Shane Gillis, he's the new stand-up, like up and coming,
No, yeah.
and he said that the kids at the like whatever Olympic team, he's like, dude, they need to chill out. He's like, they're bringing out kids that are just like too hot. And like he said it in like a joking way, but he's like I'm serious though, like this is fucking weird.
Well, sure. But
In-
I don't really think that's what he said about Cuties in his
Well,
review.
what he said about Cuties was that that the director tried to take these teenage girls and make them seem hot. And I think they were pretty successful in doing so. But the reason why that they did that, but throughout the entire review too, he shows how they have them like twerking in the same scene. Then they're also like on the bed, like eating candy and like being very much like little children. That they're trying to show this like what it's like to be a teenage girl discovering your own sexuality.
It's a vile piece of garbage. Don't get me wrong. It's a vile piece of trash that should be condemned at every turn.
I watched it with a heart rate monitor to see if Mr. Girl was right. That way I couldn't hide my true intentions. And the only time my heart rate spiked, there was a big Muslim woman's ass on the screen. That was the only thing that really got me.
Well, thank God. I'm thank you for providing your
I didn't stream the
non-
movie, but I streamed me watching it, and I invited people in my Discord to watch it with me. I agree, Big C, but I also agree with his point. Even though like it didn't get me, like I get it, I understand what's being said.
I don't intend to.
I thought it was just like a boring. Like him and I disagree on it being a good movie. I thought it was kind of a boring movie. I understood the point. Maybe if I didn't understand the nuance that the director was trying to go for, and I came to that conclusion myself, I would have liked it, but I didn't. Also, Big C in my chat wants to know if you've ever heard of Shanny for Christ.
I have not.
All right.
I am an anti-theist, so I don't know if my name does lend to some confusion. It's based more on my appearance.
Shanny for Christ, all I know is from talking to this person, Big C, is that they're like a big lol cow.
I mean, I do love a good Christian lol cow. So
I don't know if they're actually Christian or not. Big C can tell me. I have no idea.
But a lot of
I
people.
mean, I definitely know plenty of
They
lol
did.
cows
They
like
said
that too.
they reported me for having child porn on my channel, and I guess YouTube takes that pretty seriously, as they should, absolutely. And then, yeah, they just ban you and like check it out later, I guess. But it took a long time to get my channel back.
So I'd just like to point out, this is the first time it's really come up, and he is taking a non-joking, serious stance, saying like, yeah, they should do that. I don't think he's making his real feelings about the subject ambiguous at all. Do you agree? Because I know what your stated issue was later on.
Yeah, I think initially it's like I don't know. It's hard to watch it like with a fresh, like trying to remember what I thought of it the first time because I can say that probably my alarm bells wouldn't have been going off, but on rewatch, that little pause and like hiccup that happens like is odd.
Okay.
If I'm trying to analyze it from the perspective of someone who is biased against him, that's a damning little detail there. The fact that he went, which of course they should, like just. And I don't know if I mean that could be like a speech thing. So like, but I don't think initially on watching it that would have raised any flags or anything like that.
Well, no, I'm saying that I think that since he's not that much out there in this space, the first times it's mentioned, since he is pretty comfortable with like being jokey and stuff about it, that he's taking it like a serious non-joke. He's just like just kind of putting it out there, like I'm, basically saying like, hey guys, just so you know, I don't approve of that. So if in case anybody's wondering, no, I don't think that child porn should be on YouTube. I think that's kind of what I'm saying.
There are ways that he could have said that would have made him seem way more suspicious. If he was like overly emphatic about it or like
that's my
very
point.
specific about it. So I think all things, like I said, all things considered, I think that it's okay. But in retrospective, there are so many moments on this on rewatch that make me kind of, which is like which is why when we first started talking, I acted the way that I did when his name was brought up. But like I said to you before, I'm always willing to have my mind changed. So
okay.
And this is I'm sure that this is going to be an interesting experience watching through this.
Yeah, I'm going to play it, and I'm just going to grab a beverage real quick. I'll be back in like 10 seconds.
Oh, welcome back.
I will spew my garbage.
Unwarranted accusations on their part, then, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so my channel is, it's just like a political commentary, and like I saw cuties and like just wanted to dive in, obviously. Don't clip that, anybody.
Right.
So my channel is about empathizing with people who have different political
For the
beliefs from
record,
you.
I knew that was a joke. That one is pretty obvious.
So empathizing across party lines and trying to understand the parts of yourself that you don't like. Wait, am I on camera?
You are on my camera, yes.
Okay. I'm just checking. I'm like trying to figure out what's going on. So empathizing across party lines, accepting the parts of yourself that are ugly or difficult or that you hate, to have more empathy for other people. So pedophilia was obviously like an interesting topic for me. I've brought it up a couple times, and I'm planning like a much bigger video on it, because that's one where people have a really hard time. Like they really want to distance themselves from humanizing pedophiles. And your channel
So, just
Some
real quick,
Cool. I was gonna
um,
pause. Anyways, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that actually, as someone who is empathetic to to every fucking human being and wants everybody to be their happiest and healthiest as they possibly can be in society, this is something that I actually find difficulty with, Trying to even communicating with like my partner and trying to be like, yeah, I mean, I don't think that these people are just inherently bad because of any sort of much like I'm not going to say that a schizophrenic is like morally condemnable for being schizophrenic. I just think that they should seek treatment for their condition. But even bringing up something like that to like the general public, it sounds as an endorsement of pedophilia, which is why like I'm
Oh.
so hypercritical. I'm just my personal experience, even as neutral a statement as that, can be perceived as support, which is why I'm so critical of Mr. Girl, the way he like sort of lackadaisically engages in the subject, because I think if you actually want to affect change, I haven't even found the rhetorically appropriate way to go at it, and I'm trying to go as neutral as I possibly can.
So one of the things that I initially found really appealing to Mr. Girl is that he's the first person I've ever heard say anything like this, and I've talked about this several times. Like I don't know, it was 2016 ish. It was somewhere around 2016, and I seen one of my friends had put like a classic like wood chipper meme or something like that about pedophiles, and she was one of my friends, and then I was just like looking through the comments, just Facebooking it up, and everything was just like really like wild, and I was like, wait a minute, you guys, we're talking about people that have offended, right? Which maybe I would have agreed with that then or not. I'm not sure how I would have felt about that because it never got that far. They were like, no,
Yeah, that's the issue that I run
it
into.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter, kill them
Mm-hmm.
all, and I'm like, whoa. That seems really crazy to me. We're talking about like murdering people for thought crime. I'm not a fan of that. You guys are
Yeah.
freaking me the fuck out.
Yep. And I mean, so as a leftist, that's something that we're supposed to be against. I think that given the specific target of the potential victimization, I think obviously that's why all of this moral weight is placed on it. And I don't actually necessarily know that it's wrong to put that much moral weight on it, or rather that you should impugn someone on first blush, like someone who hasn't really thought about this, for putting that much moral weight on it because it's kids that we're talking about.
Sure, I understand that it's an emotionally weighty subject, but here's the thing. For a lot of people, there are various different things that are extraordinarily emotionally weighty for them. And as long as we don't feel the same way that person does, we're totally fine just saying, like, yeah, well, whatever. I don't really care how you feel about it. I'm right. So I understand that a lot of people will say, like, well, because the issue it does involve kids, like, I don't have to use my brain at all. I can just say, like, this person's bad. I don't have to think about it. I just don't think that's right ever. I would always have the same stance that I would have on any other subject. And like, I'm a father. It's not like I don't have a kid. Like, and I fought for my kid. My kid doesn't stay with their mom. My kid stays with me. It's not like I'm a father who doesn't care about their kid or anything like that. So like, it's not like people that are out there that may want to hurt my kid is definitely like one of the scariest things that I can imagine. So it's not like I'm totally detached from this or anything. I just think that we still have to use our heads when we're approaching these subjects, and especially because, and this is what gives me brain rot when I hear streamers talk about a lot of things surrounding it, is that if there is a better way to deal with people that have these proclivities, or if there's a better way to prevent it from happening, any of these things, I don't care. I'm not allowed to check in with myself and see how I feel about it. It's immoral for me to go like, well, I don't think that feels wrong to me. I don't care. Help me protect the kids. That's all I'm allowed to do. Like, even when I parent, I've talked to my wife about this, and she's like, well, why did you do this? I can come off as cold or unemotional. Like, no, when a decision has to be made, it's what's best for my kid. I can deal with my emotions later. I'll feel my feelings about it after what's correct is done. And so, especially if it's like, we're talking broadly, how do we keep our children safe? I don't want to hear anything about how you're feeling. I want to hear about how are we going to best keep children safe. And if we want to be like, God, I hated that we had to do that, let's talk about that after we make the right choice for them. That's always my stance.
Embarrassing streamer moment, by the way. My microphone has been muted in OBS this entire time.
Oh no! If you need audio from me, just let me know.
I probably will, because I do actually want to upload this one, but yeah, oopsies. I hope it seems to be picking me up from...
Shit, I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, though?
No, yeah, that makes sense. I think that you said that you're a father and that you are able to make the distinction between, like, you know, what appropriate advocacy or whatever sort of looks like. I just, like I said, I don't think that I can necessarily fault people for feeling the way they do, especially with all of the stuff that's, you know, all the stuff that's coming out about the Catholic Church all the time, and like all of these institutions that were previously like trusted that are now like dens of pedophilia. I think that people are just kind of like, holy shit, that like this is a massive threat, like it's everywhere, and like I just think, you know, there can be better conversations had when sort of public. So, and I know, given the subject matter, this might be asking you much, but when public, you know, anger sort of calms down a little bit.
No, people need to hear this shit, and they need to hear it. They need to hear the things that are going to make them uncomfortable, because that's the problem. I don't fault anybody for feeling the way that they feel about it, ever. That's fine. I fault people for when it comes to kids, they're going off of their feelings instead of using their brains. Our kids deserve better than us being emotional when we're making decisions about them. Like, parents making emotional decisions over intellectual decisions about what's best for their kids leads to all kinds of terrible things. And I think that if you make a mistake and you're trying to be intellectual about it, you can go, okay, at least I made the best decision with the information that I had. It's not as though like I could have done any better. All my information said this will lead to the best outcomes for my kid. But if my kid comes home and tells me, you know, something I don't want to hear, and I let them see my emotional reaction to that instead of engaging with them intellectually about whatever they told me, which one is going to have a higher risk of affecting them poorly? It's the emotional one. Like if my kid had, like, Dad, I failed all my classes. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And then like I just like go off because I'm upset? Or do I go, all right, listen, I think we need to focus way more on school. No friends on school nights. Video games go up at 6 o'clock, and we're going to get you a tutor when they come up.
My dad.
When they come up, well, if you're failing all your classes, we're going to have a problem. When the grades come up, we can start to have some of these privileges back, and we're going to be monitoring your classwork a lot more seriously. We're going to be talking about it at least once a week until things stabilize out. You know, I think that this is necessarily the better route to take rather than having the emotional take. A lot of parents have the emotional take, and for some of them, it works out. They're like, well, no, I can't do anything, you guys. They'll implement those restrictions on themselves. Like, no, guys, I can't play Fortnite tonight. Sorry, I can't hang out. My dad freaked out on me. I have to get my grades up. Oh, my God. This can work, sure. But I think it's the wrong choice.
How does this comport to societal, like, addressing of pedophilia?
So a lot of the things that bear out being the best for keeping kids safe from sexual assault are things that people don't want to hear. They don't want to deal with it. Number one, for instance, most pedophiles are non-offending. Most of the time, sexual assault of minors happens from family members that are intoxicated. Intoxication is a really big overlap, but it is more often people that are close to them that aren't even pedophilic. They're not even attracted to children. They are just opportunists taking advantage of a vulnerable person, which is...
Sure. I agree with that. I just don't think that, like, telling your average mother, well, don't worry, Sharon, your kid is safe. Most pedophiles are non-offending is a thing that's going to make her feel like her kid is any more safe.
Well, what I'm saying is, hey, Sharon, if you want to kill all pedophiles, you have roughly a 5 times less likelihood of harming your kids, then I think your brothers need to go into the wood chipper too. I know they don't. I know that you have no reason to think they're attracted kids. But if we're trying to eliminate harm, and you're going to eliminate these people who have a much better track record than uncles do, uncles got to go too.
I mean, I never said anything about elimination. Sharon doesn't believe in that.
Well,
Sharon's
I'm just saying that.
well, Sharon's just concerned for the safety of her kids, and she's seen some things on the news that sort of give her pause and make her worry.
Right.
That's how I'm trying. That's how I always try to frame my perception of this subject. Is if I pull some random woman on the street who's like pushing two kids in a stroller, and I try to approach her about this subject. What is the best way, if I want to get my point across, that I can rhetorically approach her? And there are things I would say that are factually true, or there are things I could say that are factually true that I still wouldn't in that moment because it's not an effective way of communication. I mean,
well, realistically, I'm probably not going to talk to a stranger pushing kids with a stroller. But if it's somebody a bit closer where you can engage with them, I think that it is really important to have a conversation with them about the people that they have in the home and go, look, I understand the idea of somebody who is a pedophile being around your kids is super scary. And it's really scary because they look like everyone else. You can't even tell who it is. However, if we really want to keep our kids safe, we particularly need to be keeping our eyes on our kids when we're considering who's going to be watching them. So, like,
I mean, most parents know that, though. Like, you've already lost them at the beginning. Like, they're already, like, locking their kid in the basement and, like, putting security cameras facing out every corner of their house sort of thing.
You'd be surprised.
I mean, maybe
honestly, it's the uncle.
I don't want to derail this too much.
Mom doesn't want to think her brother... I was saying the problem is that mom doesn't want to think her brother's capable of it. She wants to blame the person who's significantly less likely and focus all their fear on that.
Yeah, no, that I definitely agree with that, but I don't know if that's when it comes to empathizing with people given to pederastic thought or whatever, or pedophilic thought, I just don't know that would be my approach for it, is all I'm saying. But I don't want to derail this too much more because this is an hour-long discussion.
Yeah, no worries.
Oh, yeah, also I'm a rapper. I just came out with a rap album.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's being pretty well received by my core audience, but we'll see how people react to it beyond that. Your channel is pretty partisan.
Yeah, I'd say so.
And it's almost designed to be a pipeline, like kind of the way you talk and interact with people.
Yeah, I would say
right,
so.
Like you're trying to draw people towards your view.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
And my channel is kind of the opposite of that. I'm not trying to drive people away from my view, but it's more about.
I'm sorry. Big C said something that made me go back in time in my brain. I was actually presenting what he said a bit different. Big C said parents are the #1 offenders of child molestation, which is true. And so,
born out in day.
One of the things that Mr. Girl used to talk about a lot is that by empathizing with pedophiles, by saying, like, I can see them as a human being, they're not some different thing than me. So then instead of if I have a thought like this, I don't go, oh, you know what, that's just a fleeting thought or whatever. I can actually examine it, having empathized with somebody who has these thoughts regularly and go, okay, is this something that I should be worried about? Do I need to be worried about my kids with that? And not just go, I'd never do something like that, then end up getting drunk and doing something like that. Well, this is what the value is to the parent for empathizing.
Right. I would say in that regard, then, we need to make sure that we tie that empathy directly to another real-world example of a... what's the term for it? Is it paraphilia?
Paraphilia.
Yeah, like, we need to be comparing it directly to that and say, okay, it isn't okay, probably, to just leave this unaddressed. You should probably talk to someone about this. I think for me, the big issue surrounding this sort of topic is dissolving the
Yes, he has elk.
Perceptions are from psychology professionals.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'll be real with you. I don't fucking care if most of the public still wants to day of the rope pedophiles, as long as the people who are actually able to help them, can get them the help they need. Eventually we can work through to general public perception, but my focus is on getting the people who need help. And the major thing I see standing in the way is even if you are one of the few who go, okay, so like obviously I know that like I need to seek help for this. You seek help, and then your therapist is like, oh, what the hell, you freak, and then they like ostracize you for it. That to me is the much bigger issue than general public perception. Now I know that like that's general public perception is part of helping these people feel comfortable enough to go seek out therapy. But if they get to the point where they're at the therapist and the therapist is not receptive, they're not going to be able to get the help they need.
Sure. I think we've come a pretty long way with therapists doing that. But I think before somebody feels comfortable talking to their therapist about it, they need the public perception needs to be enough to where somebody can talk to their brother, their sister, their mom, their closest friends who and just have some sort of understanding that they're not going to turn on them immediately and say like, "Hey, everybody, this guy right here, get him." You know what I mean? This is where the war is really being fought.
Does that need to be done with the specific targeting of like the disambiguation of the paraphilia, or can it just be like a general increase in empathy overall? Because I feel like people need to increase empathy overall, period.
This is undoubtable, especially if I go on Twitter. I feel this so strongly. But no, I think that specifically empathy towards this paraphilia needs to be increased if people are going to be able to open up to the ones that are closest to them and then end up having that kind of support group network to push them into getting help. Because that's a really big problem, is that people are just afraid to get help. And,
I agree, but I also know that is true for many other mental disorders and paraphilias.
Sure, but as you said, not many of them scare us, the public, nearly as bad, so they have this additional weight on top of it. So you already have this issue of, like, going, like, this is just a me thing, nobody needs to know about this, or, like, even trying to, like, tell themselves, like, I can deal with this without help and all that. And if somebody with depression breaks, maybe they do something bad to themselves. If somebody with these proclivities breaks, they harm a child, and we don't want that.
Yeah. No, I'm 100% with you. People need to be able to get the help that they need.
Yeah. All right. I'll press play.
Yeah.
Like,
we don't differ too much here.
Convincing people to...
I didn't think we would.
Understand and empathize with and kind of humanize those that they disagree with the most. And so we're sort of opposed just in terms of approach. And then I think also our beliefs are our values are different too.
Probably. I don't think there's anything antithetical about the positions, though. After all, even if you despise a person and their positions, you have to humanize them, because otherwise you alienate yourself from the potential of adopting those views in the future. So, for example, if you completely otherwise or dehumanize, say, fascists...
Like having read a few books on the Weimar Republic preceding the rise of the Nazis, not enough people really pay credence to like how it was just kind of like normal Germans, normal citizens like you or me that just let this shit happen.
Sure. On. I think that, there's two things, right? One, they didn't have the Holocaust to look back at and go like, this is what happens when you don't check systems of power that are doing this sort of thing. And also...
No, but there were mass death events that had already occurred that could have been pointed to.
Well, sure, that was in the part where I'm saying, and also though, I think most people, if you're seeing people getting killed like that too, it's probably pretty difficult for a lot of people to go, yeah, I'm willing to get killed to say this is wrong. I don't think the average person has that ability to abandon their survival instinct.
Well, I'm not even talking about survival instinct. I'm talking about going back and seeing footage from 1943 of Hitlerjugend with tears streaming down their face as they rapidly salute the Fuhrer. I mean, like, we're talking about a like society swept up in this, and what Mr. Girl and Bosch are getting at here is really important. Humanizing these sociological identities is incredibly important. While simultaneously condemning the abhorrent ones, but it's incredibly important because it is easy to fall into those traps.
Sure.
Nothing makes us special because we're like giga-brained debate lords or anything like that. Like we are all stupid, blubbering, barely evolved primates. I think is what Christopher Hitchens used to describe us as. Like we're not geniuses, and it's important to like keep apprised of that. So this I do agree with.
Yeah. I think Mr. Girl does a good job uh, talking about that too. Maybe not in this conversation though. My memory's a bit hazy.
You make it as though they're not human. Well, unfortunately, humans turn into fascists. So, if you treat them in that way, people adopt the impression that, for example, the Nazis are some entirely otherworldly thing. That it's not really a human issue. It's some magical evil that snatches people in their sleep. So you need to be more nuanced than that, so people can understand these problems take root in all of us.
That anyone can be turned into a Nazi given the right circumstances.
Certainly.
Yes, but I think from what I've
Born
seen,
in another country, we're both
and-
Hamas militants. Like, given the right sociological circumstances, or members of the IDF, or, fucking Russian soldiers marching into Ukraine. Like, given the right sociological circumstances, anybody can be fucking anything.
Yeah, of course.
That's-
I mean,
yeah.
we're just we come out as clay, waiting to be molded by our environment, right?
Yes, God breathed life into that clay, too.
tell me if I'm misinterpreting, that you also believe that there's sort of a balancing act of giving.
So you guys know, the big JC is he's an atheist. So
Yes,
these
I'm
are
an
just
anti.
jokes.
I'm an anti-theist. I
Yeah.
do label as an anti-theist, but yeah, no, I was raised Christian, so I meme about it a lot, and
Yeah.
obviously adopting the Jesus moniker,
Well, that's because of how you
heir
look,
to
though.
Nazism by
Well,
empathizing with it, or
yeah.
I
Say if you were bald, in
I
tan,
was-
probably not so much. Yeah,
If
because
I was
everybody knows
bald,
Jesus was white with long
I would
hair.
be like based Picard or something. That is
Yeah.
true.
I guess I just think that you speak very dismissively of ideas that you disagree with, particularly ideas that you super disagree with, like Nazism.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, yeah, you can
Right.
speak
Yeah, I don't have an
dismissively of
issue
the
with that
ideas,
either.
but you have to recognize.
Oh,
I don't think there's
interesting.
anything wrong with speaking dismissively of an ideology that inherently dismisses certain groups of people as like
Oh.
less than human or not worth consideration. So like Nazis, I have absolutely no issue. I can humanize them up to the point where I can go, okay, a human, like given the right sociological circumstances, I could fall into this exact same trap, and then I can present them the arguments, and if they're unwilling or unreceptive, at that point, I don't know, like what obligation am I to humanize an ideology that inherently dehumanizes?
So this is the when it comes to things like this, Froggy Style. Thank you very much for the $5 sticker. I really appreciate you, buddy. So when it comes to how we're going to treat people like Nazis, if we're super dismissive of them and we don't let them, if we're engaging with them and rhetorically we don't really let them get out any points, we're just always sort of like beating them to the punch and sort of ignoring them all the time, what's going to happen is that we don't get to talk to Nazis anymore. And instead, all the Nazis are going to meet up where only Nazis hang out. And then they're going to get more and more emboldened. They're not going to have any way to break out of this way of thinking. And in order to get somebody who's really far into an ideology out of that ideology, you have to empathize with them. You have to meet them where they're at. You have to understand why it is that somebody who really doesn't have they don't have what's the phrase? They don't have a horse in the race to develop these strong feelings that would amount to them being complicit with the genocide of entire people. How on earth could this possibly happen? If you can't answer that, you can't change their mind. And the only way that we can understand that is by empathizing with them.
Well, so you're also kind of presuming a bit of rationality in their decision making. I think most modern Nazis and ethno-nats are like 19-year-old white boys whose crush started dating a black guy in high school, and their entire political elections are formed off of that. Like at a certain point, I have to look at the ideology and recognize the inherent there's nothing rational about Nazism or fascism. they're like inherently idiosyncratic ideologies. So to me, I can go, okay, I recognize the material conditions that drove you to this position, and now I'm going to make fun of you until you drop it.
Yeah,
Because
it
I
doesn't seem
think
like that
humiliation.
works.
Well, actually, I would say it does. I think that give the gentleman on our screen right now is a prime example of that.
I think that
Of someone.
sometimes it can work, but uh, I guess all I have to do is sort
But
of
then you can't say
observe.
that it does. Then you can't say it doesn't work. It does work.
I think
Because
that it
see, here's
can
the
work,
thing:
but it doesn't
how else
broadly
are you
work.
How else do you debate a fascist out of their positions? Data? They don't care about that. They'll call it Jewish and dismiss
Well, I
it.
already told you. The first step is to understanding why they come to this conclusion that I think is ultimately incorrect. And
Okay, but like I said, I came to
and then
that
like
point.
street epistemology, basically. This is the way that you're generally going to want to do it. And also, if this person
Well,
is a fascist or a Nazi for the reason that you said that they are, that means that they're probably scared and vulnerable people who got caught up into
fascism is an
something.
ideology born out of sexual insecurity. I
Sure.
100% agree with Bosch on that.
So, if that's the case, then they probably don't feel like they have a lot of people that they can really talk to. And they probably fell into it because these people are willing to talk to them. Because there's one group of people, if there's one group of people that really wants to recruit more people and they'll treat you friendly no matter what you think or how you feel, it's people that are part of a hate group. So, I
Yep.
see that you're feeling
Yep.
sad and lonely. So now you have somebody who isn't a part of this. Somebody says, hey, look, I don't agree with you, but I want to know your story. I want to understand why you think this. And if I can engage
I
with
think
them in a
that's
way
fine.
that isn't harmful to them, it might show them that maybe these people who say things that I remember being uncomfortable at first, but I fell into it because they were so nice to me. And if I didn't believe these things, then I wouldn't have any friends. I wouldn't have anybody to help me feel like I matter. But this person is, and they don't think that. I might be more willing to listen to them if I can lower that guard down. Because all these really hardcore ideologies, like I talked to you about religion too, the thing that's the hardest, the reason why it's so hard to get people to change from these things is because that guard's up. It doesn't matter what you say, they're not really going to listen to you. But there's something special about when you connect with somebody by empathizing with them, is that they're going to tend to be a lot easier to get around their guard.
I don't think a single one-on-one conversation with a fascist or a Nazi will convince them out of their ideology. I think the
That's not what
only
I'm
way
advocating
that
for.
so I think the only what I advocate for is their ideas being socially intolerable. So I don't think that you can ever cure Nazism, fascism, racism from the world. I mean, fascism is just a devolution of liberalism. So that one I think might go away with time. But stuff like the anti-Semitism and stuff like that, bigotry will always be around. And bigotry is born out of the same area of the brain that like disgust is, and you can't make a rational argument towards that.
So we had this conversation similarly with the religious thing, and one of the issues that I have then is the one I have now too, is that you're reducing what I'm trying to say down to you can change somebody's mind in a single conversation. And I'm not really necessarily saying that this is going to be the way to do it. However, I will say that there is nobody that can rid these problems from everybody by just talking broadly to everybody all at once. However, I think that we have seen remarkable examples of people being moved out of these really strict ideologies that are like some of the worst of the worst. I'm sure you're familiar with like Daryl Davis, the guy who
Rings a bell.
he's a black man who has gotten more people to leave the Ku Klux Klan than like anybody. He's got
Yes,
like
yeah. Was he just on Joe Rogan? He's fucking badass. I didn't.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I
So
think
this
he was
happened
just on
by
Joe Rogan. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
talking to people and empathizing with them.
Well,
And
but don't you think that he has, number one, that he is sort of a unique case, and number two, that he has a specific like advantage to his physical persona that makes him more likely to be like, how am I supposed to go to a Klansman and talk them out of it, or do I have to be black? You know what I
so
mean? Like,
I
if that the part of the reason they were so okay, because I do know who you're talking about. Part of the reason they were so receptive to this guy is because he did exactly what I say is the number one way to combat bigotry is you take like if you're transphobic, you point to someone in their life who is trans and you say, are they a freak or are they normal? And then they go, wow, I guess they're just a normal person. Like, that was what he did. He presented himself as a guy. He's like, hi, I'm a dude. Nothing wrong, nothing different, nothing wrong with us. And you're right. He owns the robes of a former Grand Wizard, gave them to him after he left the clan. And like I said to my partner, that's a trophy. That's a hunting trophy in a way. He went out there and he combated this ideology in a way that I think is wholly unique to his perspective and has something to show for it. I just don't know that, like, for my advocacy, I don't think that's something I can personally do.
Sure. Do I think he's unique in his ability to do so? Not at all. Do I think that he has a lot of advantages that help him? Sure. I think that being black is a huge step forward in being able to progress this because of the specific focus that he has on bringing Klansmen out of the clan. However, I think that the second biggest thing that he has is the confidence in his ability to empathize with people in such a way that where he's willing to approach them in this style of persuasion. And I think that maybe I can't convince anybody ever. Maybe you can't convince anybody ever. But maybe you can convince somebody that being empathetic towards people that they heavily disagree with, who are rooted deep in an ideology that we find problematic, can. And I think it's a lot easier to convince people to be empathetic towards people that you don't agree with than it is to convince a Nazi to become a lefty.
Well, I do agree for the most part, but I do think there is a distinction. I have to separate certain ideologies from others as distinct in and of themselves in terms of how I would go about fighting them, and those are usually the ones that are based around a persecution of a minority. So, like Nazism,
sure,
racism,
that's why I use Daryl Davis.
Ideologies. Well, yes, but again, I don't know how am I supposed to Daryl Davis people.
I think that...
I'm saying the reason that he was able to employ the empathetic strategy is because he was a black man.
I'm saying that's just one element of it.
I think that's the most important element in regards to the specific group that he was going after, because that's the minority group that the entire group is formed around hating.
Sure.
So for them to be presented with an example of that, who not only treats them like human beings, but also is willing to like engage with them and eventually just like you said, convinced a whole bunch of people to leave. I think that is I'm not trying to like id pull even. I'm just saying, like, from a strategic perspective, that's how you go about that.
There's two things about this. One is that what I'm advocating for in this conversation is that you advocate for people to be more empathetic towards people that have the worst views from their perspective, because that you could inspire the next Daryl Davis, who is in the position of being the opposition of the ideology. And if you can inspire them to be empathetic towards the people that hate them, then you can inspire another Daryl Davis from becoming. But the other thing that I want to point out is that when we talked about this regarding religion, I'm agnostic. You said that, like, I don't think that these conversations can result in somebody becoming not religious. But I am the thing. I am an agnostic person talking to a religious person. Hey, like, stop it. But, in a much more clever... like I said, I've had quite a number of them when I was younger, but I feel weird about it. I don't think that I should have done it. I think it was irresponsible because I couldn't really gauge the ramifications of what that would do to them.
Last thing, I know I'm holding this up, just last thing, beyond me saying, recognize that sociological conditions produce any ideology in a given individual. Be sensitive to the fact that given a change of scenario, you could have been just as susceptible. Beyond that, what do you mean in terms of extending empathy? Because I'm fine with that. Like, that's already what I'm doing.
I think that...
But I'm absolutely not going to say, like, Nazis are equivalent to, like, anti-Nazis because they're both ideologies that people came to. Like, there's a
I'm not really big on saying that comparing human beings to other human beings in this kind of way in general.
I find this to be ideology.
Well, you said... Okay, so I'm just trying to explain to you. You said, how can you do that? So I would avoid making comparisons. And what I would do is I would want to talk to them about why they think what they think and do so without judgment. I would want to talk to them with a level of curious intrigue and just trying to delve into it and not being like, dude, are you fucking serious? Oh my God. None of that shit. All that shit's out the window. No condescending, no judgment when they're explaining to me why they think what they think, and having a true interest in delving into how they got to that point, because that's when you can start to see the things come together, how they got there. And those are the pieces that come together. Those are the things that you can kind of try to focus on. And if all the strands that led to them becoming this, if you can pull one out, probably not going to be that big a deal. But as you can pull more and more out and convince them or give them a different understanding about these things, then this is how you're going to have a better chance of doing that. However, though, I still think that you're right that if you are of the group that the person is not a big fan of, and that's the part of the hate group that they are in, you're going to be much better off if you are a member of that group like Daryl Davis is with the Ku Klux Klan. So abdicating for empathy to inspire a Daryl Davis is probably people like me and you's best bet, but I still think we can try anyways.
I'm not willing to commit to him as like the archetype. I think he's a very rare case. I don't think that you can.
I don't want him to be.
I don't think that. Well, I don't. No. Don't get me wrong. I don't want him to be either. I'm just talking in terms of the ideologies and their reception of these ideas. I don't think that like a Jewish person going up to a Nazi and saying, "Hello, I'm a Jewish person. See, I'm totally normal, and there's nothing wrong with me at all, and I don't run the world." I don't think that. I think. I don't know. Like again, I don't know what Daryl Davis's secret sauce is, but man knows how to cook. That's all. That's the last thing I'll say.
Sure.
We gotta figure out the recipe.
Okay. Well, I think I gave a few ingredients, but let's try to move through this. I don't have the whole recipe though.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
However malicious the ideas, they can take root in people, and I suppose you can be sympathetic to the circumstances by which a person comes to adopt them, if for no other reason than because that sympathy can help you challenge those ideas, but not the ideas themselves.
So I think we do have pretty different values. There's a brief intersection of cordiality where there is moderate disagreement, but it sounds like past that you're comfortable saying fuck Nazis, and I'm not. And then it also, our end goal is different, where I'm not trying to bring people toward my corner to the extent that I even really identify as having a corner.
What is your not corner then?
Like I can tell you my stances on various policies, but I think I'm hesitant to really give it a name, even that feels sort of antithetical to what I'm trying to do, right? Like I kind of want everybody to be an independent in a sense, or a centrist, I guess. Where centrist meaning and that you have your stances on individual issues are formed based on your real values and beliefs, and not of those around you, and not from social or political pressure. So I lean into controversial topics on my channel, especially because that's a place for me to sort of like.
One thing, I don't think that Bosch is really susceptible to social or political pressure when it comes to his positions. That's just one thing I wanted to point out. I think that he is probably sympathetic to that idea, although he and I both label as on the left, and that's not because we're interested in like succumbing to the whims of any given ideology. It's just because like that's where most of our axioms and principles place us in positions.
Sure.
And for the sake of like coalition building and actually affecting real world change, you need more than one person.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't know if I'm sure he probably heard this from somewhere else. My buddy Will had said he came under fire trying to put a panel together about trans genocide like a year ago. He said, I think that more than just trans people need to be in support of trans rights movement for it to be successful. Yeah, and that was like something that he got a lot of shit for.
Yeah, because leftists on the internet are retarded.
Yeah, coalition building is obviously essential. If only black people cared about black rights, they wouldn't have them. Period. They don't have the numbers. 100% of them could vote for it, and they would lose. assuming
I mean,
they
this
would
is,
gain the right to vote to begin with. Yeah, it's
dude,
just
you're preaching to the
seems like a
choir at
give.
this
Yeah.
point because this is what I spend most of my time arguing with my political camp against. So, but yeah, no, glad we're in agreement there.
Yeah, that's just like the most like double digit IQ take you could possibly have. But
Single
yeah, it
digit.
seems to elude people. Well, I don't know if
The
you say single
quality of
digit. I
the
don't know where
argument,
these other people are at then.
the quality of arguments should always be. I actually part this. I just talked to another political group about this. The quality of the argument should always be what carries through. The identity of the person can contribute to the effectiveness of the argument. So, for example, if you're like a black person giving an argument on reparations, you being black, or Daryl Davis talking to Klansmen, you being black inherently lends a sort of credibility to your argument. Does it mean your argument is like less effective or less cohesive rather in the hands of someone else? No. But for the purposes of presentation, it certainly helps.
Well, I think part of the reason why Daryl Davis is so shocking is because actually it's kind of shocking that they would listen to a black person at all. So it
that
can
was
actually
what I was
hurt.
weirded out by. I was like, why the fuck did they even give them the time of day? Like, no offense, but they're the Klan. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
So it can have
It's
the opposite
awesome.
effect.
Well, yes, it can.
So that's
You also
all.
have to always stay safe.
I was just basically just commenting on like I don't know if it's inherently going to help hold more weight because it's intuitively it feels like it would have.
Well,
less
that's what I'm
weight.
saying. No. That's what I'm saying is like when we speak of the quality of the argument, there is no inherent strength added by a black person delivering an argument on reparations, but the intuitive quality that a person like again, and we're talking about Joe Schmo on the street, the intuitive quality does factor in when we're talking about broad advocacy in that regard.
Okay, I might have just misunderstood you then.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean like no. I'm not a Deadpool guy.
Okay.
No.
Other people might not feel free to say or be willing to say. And then two, it kind of just helps me prove like my meta point of like, you can say, this stuff. And the more of us that speak our minds and don't cave to the pressures of our political groups or our friends or neighbors or whatever, the more free we all are.
Maybe. I'm not value neutral about it, though. I would much rather prefer people cave completely to hegemonic values if they're good ones than freely adopt bad values. I don't think we have to make that choice, though. I think if you have the right information and the right guidance, people can freely arrive at good positions.
And I also agree with that.
Yeah, but you're talking them into it. So freely is
you have to talk anyone into anything, don't you? I mean, there's no, bipartisanship.
I guess I'm saying I'm trying to talk people out of stuff, and you're trying to talk people into stuff.
You can talk people out of stuff as well, if it's transphobia or racism or whatever. But of course,
I'm sorry, this was just a quick aside. Does he understand that those are the same thing in a way? Like talking someone out of a position is just talking them into not holding that position. Like I don't think there's a meaningful semantic difference.
I do think that there is. He's basically saying that so I'm not going to try to convince you that I'm right. I'm going to try to convince you like I don't want to convince you that I know and am doing the right thing. I'm trying to convince you that you might be doing something that's bad and not realize it. That's how Mr. Girl tends to approach a lot of things. Is that I think that what you're doing is bad for you and you don't even know it.
Yeah, I just don't know how you do one without the other is my thing. But well, I mean, that's just a me thing.
I guess I'm just saying that is the meaningful difference here. Instead of saying like I have the answer, I'm not going to tell you like, hey, I have the answer, so you should listen to me because I'm right. I'm going to say that you should consider that maybe you don't have the answer, and here's why. Here's an alternative idea that's like, or here's what you should be considering as to why maybe you're not right. Because I think that empathizing with somebody that you disagree with
all sounds the same to me.
I guess one is a preaching of certainty, and the other one is a begging of humility.
I don't know that like when I advocate for my position. I mean, the issue with the preaching of certainty of racism is bad. I don't like.
Is it just because it feels offensive to call it preaching when it's about racism?
No, it's I don't understand what's wrong with everyone adopting that stance and why I shouldn't try and convince people out of holding that stance and push them into the correct stance.
Um, I sure. I understand. I understand that idea. I mean, there is an idea that if you do so and fail, you will only serve to have emboldened that person in their ideas.
Sure, but that's the same for like any topic really. So
Right. Well, this was you're kind of like saying like, well, if you do think that you're right, then you should be doing this. I don't see a reason not to. But it could be about anything. But I say that that is a reason why not to. But
well,
if you try,
I just mean there are specific topics that I like. I'm not going to go out of my way to. I am a socialist and I'm a socialist advocate, but I recognize my fallibility in terms of my knowledge of economics. Maybe there's something I'm missing. So I'm not going to go and say socialism is absolutely correct and this is 100%. I could say socialism is a objectively more moral system than capitalism and make arguments as such. But when it comes to something like racism, I don't know what because usually skepticism is you employ that with the expectation of like a counter argument, but like what's the counter to racism? Like don't be racist.
I mean, no, you could do something really similar. Like, okay, so why do you think that white people are superior to black people? And they go, oh, you know, like blah 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 IQ. We go, okay, so would you then say that we should get rid of all the low IQ white people? You can just treat epistemology this as well, and they're gonna inevitably run themselves into a corner, or they're gonna bite the bullet and then realize that the thing that they actually care about is IQ and not race. So they either
Or
end
they're
up
going to
having
realize what you're doing and walk away.
sure, but we both have already conceded that just failing to communicate well with them and emboldening them when you're trying to debate somebody off of an issue is a possibility, and that's risk that you just have to take if you want to engage in a persuasive argument, right?
Yeah, I'd just say that like when it comes to like Nazism, etc., acknowledging that no matter what, because I'm, you know, a long-haired libtard, they're gonna probably dismiss what I have to say anyways. I'd rather give them an experience that like is lasting and meaningful. If I tell some dude, some Nazi in a Discord that I fucked his dad last night, or as opposed to like giving him detailed statistics on why white IQ or whatever, like I think that both of those things are going to be equally effective in the moment. He's probably just going to walk away, but one of them he is going to have a lasting impression put on him.
I don't know. I'm pretty well willing to engage with anybody that actually wants to have a conversation with me. If they
Oh, I am too. Don't get me
disengage,
wrong.
well, wait. But I'm saying if instead of engaging with what I'm saying, they say, "Hey, I fucked your dad last night," I'm like, "All right, I get it. You don't really want to talk. Peace out."
Well, that
Um,
comes like an hour in.
okay, so if
I
you take
don't
my approach of
initially. I don't open with
empathizing,
that.
if you empathize with them though, then you can find out why they think that Nazi ideology is correct. Instead of just attacking the ideology itself, you can attack the foundations upon which the ideology is built upon. And that way you don't have to touch the thing that they're guarding. You can remove the foundation and then it'll crumble when that's gone.
I guess. I don't know. It just seems like very wishful thinking in terms of like what I personally have experienced in regards to this discourse and what I've seen others
So
experience.
I think a lot of people go about doing these things in really weird ways because for me, the people that have gotten the biggest ideas through to me throughout my life, and they did it without me even realizing it, is stand-up comedians. And because they do this in a way to where they never actually say to me, hey, I'm going to challenge your ideas about this thing. What they do is they're making me laugh. They pepper in a little bit of social commentary here, a couple political jokes. And by the end of it, I have considered a bunch of things that I hadn't really considered sort of in this fast pace, thing.
Yeah, and
And
the right has adopted that tactic in a lot of ways. Yeah.
and now I'm like, oh, I went through and I thought about a lot of these things in a different way, and then I can go and investigate it on my own, kind of figure out how I feel. So I think that having a way to make a connection with a person and not attacking the thing that they're guarding, but instead attacking things that it's contingent on, is probably a better tactic.
I don't know. I mean, I'll be frank. I don't think you're going to convince me out of telling a Nazi I fucked their dad. You should hear him squeal.
Well, that's fine. I don't think you're going to convince a Nazi that Nazism's bad by pretending to have
I
sex
don't
with her father.
I don't think I'm gonna do it by empathizing with them either.
Well, uh, sure, I understand.
Of course,
But
there's
that's also talking them into. So you're trying to move them to a specific location, and I'm saying, I'm trying to, um, I'm trying to actively not do that.
you think there's something wrong with pushing a person towards anti-racism?
Yeah.
Why do you think so?
Um. Well, it depends on how you're pushing them, obviously, but I think that
Do you think there's something wrong with
Trump and the, you know,
I think if you're trying to do it by saying that you fucked their dad, yeah.
that? Okay, fair enough.
I think that it's going to be very much method dependent, yeah.
So can you,
anti-SJW,
well,
anti.
since we're going over this for the optics of Mr. Girl, can you understand why, as someone who had never heard anything from him before, the way that he said that was a little bit suspect?
I understand.
Especially as someone who's like, ostensibly an anti-racist.
So I'll just say
Myself.
first I'll say yes, but then I'll also add I understand that there are a multitude of reasons why somebody who I've never spoken to, and even people that I have spoken to, might not like Mr. Grill for reasons. There's a pretty decent list of those reasons. However, I think that there's a fair amount of this time where there are some misunderstandings about his actual positions. There are some weird things that come up with how he communicates, and then I usually try to
Yes,
step in and have these
that's really my
conversations.
criticism. That's really going to be the focal point of my criticism of this entire discussion is just the way that he communicates his ideas. I don't even know that his heart is in the wrong place. I don't think it is. If he wants to get get more people on his side, I think that
Well, what
there's
the most important thing to consider in this conversation is how fresh he is into talking to people in this space. He does not speak Twitch poll at all here, okay? He is an English speaker speaking to a room full of Japanese and Korean people, and he doesn't even know which one speaks which language. He has no fucking clue how much of the English language is going to translate at all, and he's doing his best to put his ideas out there in that way. He has gotten better over time. He's also understood how people want him to talk and chosen not to talk that way anyways for reasons that are important to him too. So I'm not saying that I think that he's always the best effective communicator. However, until he decided to burn the Destiny Bridge, he did build a pretty big community and had a lot of fans that were willing to listen to his ideas where previously these people weren't hearing any of these ideas. So as far as getting the message out there, big success. But yeah, 100%. I fully acknowledge why you would have issues with him off of this. I think I would understand why most people would. I just I was geeked off of this. This is like the second thing I ever seen of his. I thought it was hilarious.
A woke movement now is a sign that what we thought was working didn't work that well. That we were only giving the appearance of anti-racism and pushing people to give that appearance, and now they don't want to anymore. And I think that's very understandable, and I have a lot of empathy for the backlash.
Do you think that's accurate?
I think that I think there's definitely been some tactical errors, is the nicest way of putting it, in regards to like pushing progressive ideology. Am I empathetic to bigots in their reactionary impulses? No. Am I empathetic to maybe the, I don't know, average Midwestern trucker who is tired of hearing all of this trans nonsense, which I say, by the way, this is just for framing. That's not what I think, but all this trans stuff, when his gas still costs like $4 a gallon and his paycheck hasn't gone up in years, I can definitely empathize with that. But when it comes to people like Matt Walsh, like that perspective, absolutely not. I do not care for the distaste of bigots. I
So
have no time for it.
I think all that he's really saying is that there's a lot of people who are bullied into just sort of adopting these ideas for a long time. And then as soon as they get the leeway to not feel like they have to in order to have people not attacking them all the time, they're going to come out and say what they really think with a vengeance.
Sure. So
And
first,
that's
first
what
of all,
that's what I'm saying. Like, do you agree with that? That if you're not really convincing
no,
people, but you're just making them feel
no,
like they
because
can't
I think
speak.
no, because I think that the positions are strong enough that they need to be held.
Oh,
Positions
well,
of anti-racism need to be held.
okay. But I think that is exactly what happened. I think there was a lot of people who felt like they couldn't say a lot of things that they actually had on their mind, and then Trump came along and said, "Hey,
I don't think.
I'm going to
Well,
say what you're thinking," and then they did.
I don't think that's actually true. Then I would actually take it back. I don't think that's true. I don't think this contingent of like the silent majority or whatever is actually real.
I didn't say anything about a silent majority. I'm just saying that there's people who have been effectively bullied into feeling like they can't talk, finally
You're
get a
defining the
glimmer.
silent majority. You're defining the silent majority right now. That is the
Uh,
definition of the silent majority in regards to these sort of like racialized politics.
okay, well, it's definitely something I have seen firsthand in mass, and I was pretty freaked out about it when it happened. I was like, "What the fuck happened here?" I thought things with race issues and stuff were pretty chill, and I got a really crazy awakening like in 2015. I was like, "Oh my god, there's so many more like very angry racist people around me that I didn't even know about.
I
How did I miss it this whole time?"
I've just been on the internet too long. I've always known those people have existed. Been on the
Uh,
internet since I was 11. Like I even in RuneScape, you ran into these people.
sure, I wasn't on the internet nearly as much. But I'm
Sure.
talking about people in real life. Uh,
Well, so this is the thing though, is people on the internet are people in real life too. It's just on the internet they feel like they're more able to express their opinions because it's behind like an avatar or a
right, because
persona or
you
profile
can't.
picture.
It's a lot harder to
But
effectively bully people into silence on the internet.
when they're given permission by a large public figure to speak their garbage in real life, they will do it. I don't think that that makes them doing so justified.
That's not what I said though.
No, I wasn't. No. I'm not necessarily. Not everything I say is like a direct response to like
Okay.
you in an argumentative manner. That's me. That's me stating my position. I don't think that like just because you were a Nazi incel online and then Donald Trump rolled along and now you have a more the Overton window has shifted further to the right. I don't think that that suddenly means that like you're okay to say these things. I think you should still not fucking believe or say them. I don't think that just because like they're more socially permissible. Like I attack these positions from a data and from a moral and ethical perspective. And so to me it doesn't matter like where the Overton window is. These positions are still fucking stupid and abhorrent.
Sure, I guess I'm just saying that when we do these bullying tactics, it can make us feel like that there's less of these people out there than there really are. And then once the window shifts, we find out just how wrong we were, and we're, you know,
Well,
going to be less
I think
prepared to
that
deal with it because of
I
it.
think that making it seem as though there are as few Nazis out there as possible is an effective tool in creating less Nazis. If the
Until
movement seems small, impotent, yeah, I know until, but if the movement is small and weak and impotent, then why would you join it?
I don't think, I think people don't really have that much of a sense of it in that way. They just kind of figure out who's okay with them saying what in front of them, and then when they feel like
So
they
do you
can't
think
say
we
what they
should?
when they feel like they can't say what they think, they don't, and then once they do, uh, it comes out a lot stronger than it would have otherwise. That's guess was what I'm saying.
Sure.
That when the mouth stays shut, all that's still brewing and getting more potent on the inside. And there's an additional animosity for not being able to
Sure,
have said it.
so now we're getting into the realm of like thought crime, and I'll be honest, I probably walk past people every day who are absurdly fucking racist in some way or another, but if they're not acting upon it in their life in any sort of meaningful way that negatively affects the lives of those around them, it's contained only in their head because they know the second they open their mouth and start spewing that bullshit that they're going to get a bombardment of cascade of ridicule and hatred, then
Yeah,
I don't really have a problem with it at that
you're
point.
gonna have
I
a
don't care
problem
what
with it when
people
it
think.
comes
I
out
care.
worse than it would have been when things change and they are okay.
Yeah, but
They are pretty socially safe to do so
why should things change? Shouldn't we be
because they're
pushing
going
towards
to.
things not well,
But
shouldn't we always be consistent in our positions and say despite things changing, it's still wrong to say these things?
yeah, but there's going to come a time where that's not going to matter. And do we care about what the outcome of that's going to be? when we're making our decisions.
I
If
mean,
the answer
if
is no,
the
then it's no. That's fine. But I think there's something to be said for the fact that it does seem to be the case that when it finally does shift over, it seems like there's a lot more animosity, and these things come out in a much stronger way than they would have come out if they were just able to engage the same way everybody else is about their thoughts and ideas.
well, hey, that's on the Democrats for putting fucking Hillary Clinton up there. All right, I didn't sign off on.
So sure,
I
but it
was I
happens.
was
That's what I'm saying.
15.
These are the things that we can't control, and I think we need to account for those things as well. We can't just say like, "Well, it's not my
I think
fault."
that I think a lesson has been learned with Donald Trump, and that the likelihood of a candidate like him getting as far as he did has been severely diminished because
He
both
might be elected again.
well, I agree. I think that the chance increases every day that Biden is retarded on Israel, but I think that I'm talking about in the future. The possibility of like another Donald Trump coming from either major party. I don't even like the Republicans are tired of him at this point.
Sure.
I think that there were a lot of factors that led to the rise of Donald Trump, and you're right, he certainly did allow for a lot of this rhetoric to become more publicly permissible. However, I think then it's our job to just go, okay, well, yeah, this was the freak time that had happened, and now we have a very good example of what happens when we don't combat this at every possible. I mean, for fuck's sake, it's not like the Democrats or even the liberals cared about Donald Trump. CNN was running his shit 24/7.
Sure, and if CNN will run his shit again,
No,
if he
well,
runs,
they will. That's because that's for a different reason this time.
well, I'm saying if he runs in this next election, he's gonna get the Republican nomination. There's no way it's not gonna
Absolutely.
happen. And
No,
so
absolutely.
when we talk about another Donald Trump, Donald Trump is the other Donald Trump that we could see. And if he wins, the people that supported him then are still going to support him now, and they are not going to be quiet or content with having lost the last election. It's going to be the counter wave of the last 4 years leading up to that is going to be so strong. If we thought things were weird and fucked up before, it'll be much worse.
Yeah, I'd say that the actually one of the most likely violent outcomes is when Donald Trump loses. Just be prepared. Like if you thought that like Jan 6th was an issue, I mean, I'm not looking forward to it. Let's just put it that way. But anyways, yeah.
Sure. All right, we'll
And
continue on.
What is
I
the
think that
backlash rooted in?
What, like white grievance?
Well, white grievance has been around for a while. You had that back in response to the civil rights movement and stuff even before then, abolitionism. They formed the KKK because of abolitionism, after all. I mean, it seems like the blowback
that's
you're
understandable,
referring to
too.
is an inevitable product of any kind of civil rights push.
I don't think the current backlash is inevitable. I don't even know if the backlash to abolitionism isn't. The freeing the slaves didn't go that well. Like, there's probably a better way to have done this. I would say that like a war is a good metric for like that rollout didn't work.
Well, it wasn't really a
so-
rollout. We had to kill a bunch of folk.
Well, I'm saying maybe we didn't have to.
Well, how do you figure that? The South started
Also,
the
I don't know
war.
what we're also the folk that were killed for Americans.
Well, I'm grouping
killed
us
ourselves.
into anti and pro-slavery here, which I'd happily consider myself part of the we that had to kill them. But
Okay,
in
but you
terms
see,
of the Civil
my
War,
theoretical approach to this is entirely different from yours, whereas I think of the South as the we as well.
and what about the slaves? Where do they fit?
They're also the we.
Well, don't you think the we that is the slaves might actually be okay with the fact that we had to fight a civil war to free us?
Yeah, that's my problem. I guess that's what my whole that's why I've come to talk to you, Vosh. That's exactly what I want to talk to you about, because I don't I have problems with that. I have problems with righteous anger, righteous violence, righteous killing. It's the same problem you have with people thinking they can never be Nazis. That I think that if you're going to take a life or take many lives, being circumspect about it is important. And looking back and saying, like, you know, the Civil War was not ideal. it obviously would have been better to
nothing's
convince people.
ideal. I mean, if you want to look back over everything in history and argue whether or not it was ideal, well, sure, it wasn't ideal. Nothing's ideal.
Well, I didn't mean to present that as a binary. I'm saying it went badly.
Well, yeah, they wouldn't give up their slaves. They left the Union.
No, but see, I'm saying if you look at it from my perspective, there's no they. It's just that we were trying to make a change, and we made the change, which was a good change. I'm not pro-slavery, and I'm not
Okay,
anti-abolition.
Can I ask you a question?
But
Yeah.
I don't know how it's possible to maintain this perspective when it's the Confederates that were the ones that pulled away.
Well, because
But-
Mr. Girl is grouping everybody under the umbrella of Americans.
Right. But of what use is that when they don't consider they didn't consider themselves Americans in that sense?
Because before and after the war, they were.
This is true, but during the war they weren't. And
Okay,
when we're
but
talking about
that's the
talking about
answer.
the process of ending slavery.
But that's the answer to your question.
Okay.
Is that before and after the war they were, and Mr. Real saying it's not ideal that people separate, like that our country literally separated into two different nations and started killing each other. He would have preferred to see a better way.
Of course, anyone would.
Yeah, so it's not I don't think it's a hard position to hold at all. Seems like you even agree then.
I think. Well, I don't think you mean. Do you mean holding the position? It would have been better if we didn't have to kill a bunch of folk to end slavery.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, that's not a difficult position to hold at all because a toddler could hold that.
Yeah, but that's what he's saying, and
yeah,
that's
but
what-
I
that's
think
what they're
that
working
I
through.
think that given issues of a particular weight, and I guess this is where we'll just have to agree to disagree. Maybe given issues of a particular weight, you do have to pick a side.
Not retrospectively, you don't. You can say your side can be, "Hey, I wish we would have done this differently."
But we were justified in doing it. And as they're about to get into, I don't know what other way there was at the time.
Sure.
They fired on us first.
Sure. I think that you can be justified in doing something and still not pick the optimal outcome, though. I don't think that if somebody hits me, I should
absolutely.
necessarily strike them back, even though I would be justified in doing so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think I was saying that. I'm just saying it just seems a bit, I don't know, childish and naive to look at the Civil War and go, wouldn't it have been nice if we all could have just gotten along? Yeah, but some of us wanted to hold other people in bondage. So sucks to suck, but if that's the only way that they're gonna let those people go, then I'm gonna no.
Well, right.
I
and
guess
think
I guess
Mr.
Byrne and
Gill's-
Sherman better start marching.
Sure. Well, I don't remember this part of the conversation too well, so I'll have to see what is said here. A lot of the things that
This is actually the part I take a bigger issue with in terms of his actual content, by the way. So
Sure, I got to see
Yeah.
what he says because it's been a long time.
But
sure.
It's a lot more fresh to you.
the way we did the abolition turned out to kill hundreds of thousands of people, or something, right? 150,000 or 500,000, a bunch of people, right?
Not as many as the cost of slavery. How would you have solved things then? I mean, they left the Union, you know.
Again, I'm not. You're presenting it as what I'm saying is the dichotomy of continue slavery or end slavery. The way we did it, I'm saying I reject that.
Well, then
like
how
I
would you have
reject
done it?
this. I mean, I would do what I'm doing now. I would try to get people to humanize each other. I think if you can,
I think that you'll find the
Well, and
slave
then-
owners of the South were not amicable to your particular approach. I think they were quite set in their
no
ways.
one's you're not amicable to my approach, and you're far from being a slave owner. No
Okay.
one's amicable to my approach.
Let
I'm
me
not
let
saying-
me ask you more explicitly, okay?
That was a good one.
So, with regards to the war effort, we could have fought the Civil War or not. Mind you,
Bro.
the South started it, you know, so it's not as though the North
Bro,
had
They
prompted
shot
it. Hold
Fort
on.
Sumter first.
So, if you
What's
Oh,
that?
Sorry, Dad. Bosch told me to hold on. I was just going
You
to say
were
that
there.
the
I mean-
Confederates fired on Fort Sumter first.
Oh,
you can say, "Oh, I would have convinced him to stop slavery." But if you
Yes,
want to do
that's-
right, okay, sure, then you could have convinced Hitler to not do the Holocaust, and you
I
could
would have done that too.
So is there any utility to your position here, or would you have just been sort of a time-traveling saint, preventing all these atrocities that somehow the world's best statesmen weren't able to prevent in their time?
I don't think that you're being very fair in your setups for these questions.
Saying that
I
you
think
would
that
have debated
yeah.
them out of slaveholding is kind of an odd way of going about it, no?
Well, I only said that because you made me say it. And you want me to keep saying weird shit? You can corner me into saying whatever you want. Yes, I would be a time-traveling
like
saint.
all Vosh asked
here.
him was, because like his criticism was the violence that took place, was it not, in the carrying out of the war?
Yeah.
So I don't think Vosh is unreasonable for then going, okay, well, since you have an objection to it, and I, meaning Vosh, have already accepted that this is what we had to do to free the slaves, what would you have done? I don't think that's an unfair question at all.
Well, it's not, because Vosh even said things could have went better. So there's already an agreement here. But then when Mr. Girl tries to carry that further, then Vosh goes and says, like, no, this had to be this way, right?
Well, when he says could have been better, he means it in the sense that I just meant it and you understood, which is that in an ideal world, nobody would have to kill anybody over anything. However, that's not the case, and it wasn't the case back then. And as he alluded to, if the world's best statesman at the time couldn't solve the issue with diplomacy, then of what, I don't, it almost seems a bit pretentious or arrogant for a YouTuber to assume that he could have come up with a better option, and then when he's asked about it,
he's literally saying that he's not coming up with that solution. So if you're going to come at
and
it
what
from
is the point of critiquing?
Okay, hang on. If you're going to come at it from a deterministic point of view and say like, well, obviously it had to happen this way because that's how it happened, then sure.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Well,
but what I'm saying is since it has happened in our history, if we're going to discuss it in terms of hypotheticals as to like what else could have happened given the material circumstances of the time, I don't think it's unfair to then ask, okay, well, given the material circumstances of the time, were you there? What would you have done that would have affected different?
Wait, hang on. This seems really silly to me. So if I say I'm for universal health care, and you go, oh, okay, lay out your exact national universal health care plan. Otherwise, right, but you're doing that towards Mr. Girl now. You're saying, oh, things could have been better. Please tell me how it would have been better then.
But in this case,
I'm saying things can be better, but you wouldn't tell me that I have to tell you exactly how things can be better.
Can you point to the universal health care in America that's happened?
No.
Can you point to the Civil War and examine it as a historical event?
Somewhat, sure.
Can you critique the violence of the war while also acknowledging that given the agitation that was already present in the South, there's probably going to be either that or something else equally as, if not more violent?
No, I have no idea. If we had taken a different route, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to say that I know exactly how things could have went down.
I'm not going to say that either. I know a little bit about the Civil War.
I know a little bit about it too, but all I'm trying to say here is that I don't know that we couldn't have done it better. It might be the case that we could have.
Yeah. But then I don't think like if we're because otherwise, as Vosh just said, what's the point of saying, well, we could have done it better if you can't actually provide anything?
Well, what if I said we could have done it worse? Would I have to lay out how to do that for you to accept that?
Well, considering how the Civil War resulted in like 500,000 casualties, I don't think so. No.
Well,
if we're talking, so here's the other thing though. Here's the other thing is the conversation isn't about making it worse. And actually, you know what? Yeah, I would. How would you have done it worse? Just wiping out all the Southerners? Yeah, that would have been a lot.
I don't think that I have to lay out a plan for you to accept the idea that it could have happened worse.
If we're trying to discuss it in terms of like evaluation through an ethical framework, laying out a hypothetical in order to properly examine it is the correct approach.
Well, then I would just defer back to my hypothetical about universal health care. We've never had it, but I'm for it, and I don't have a specific plan for it. And I think this is pretty common. And okay. Right?
But universal health care hasn't yet happened, so we're still talking about it in terms of potentiality. There is no potentiality for the Civil War. It happened. So if we're going to talk about it in terms of what could have happened, then I don't think it's unfair to ask for a specific framing device. We're not talking about we're talking about like it's not like we're not talking about
it's not unfair to ask for it, but it's unfair to say that's impossible unless you can provide a way.
Is that what Vosh said?
No, I want to know if you agree with that.
I didn't say that.
I didn't say you said that. I wouldn't have had to ask if you agreed. If
I think, well, let me, yeah, absolutely.
If you said that,
I would have preferred that we could have just ended slavery without violence. Do I know of a way that could have been done? No. Is there then much purpose to me saying, well, I would have preferred no violence? No.
Yes. In the context of this conversation?
No, there's not.
Well, I mean, unless you think I'm saying yes without having something to back that up.
Unless you're a racist who wishes that slavery returned, no, it's not relevant to the conversation.
Hang on. You're okay. I mean, are you so certain that like you just don't want to hear why I would say yes, there's a reason to say that? Then we could just move along.
No, go ahead. No, absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. So I guess the reason to do that would be to show you the way in which I think about these things. If Mr. Girl's trying to, he reached out to him and say, hey, I think we disagree about these different things here. By showing you, by using the Civil War as an example, it shows you how I have a different way of approaching these things that most people don't, particularly how you don't, how you wouldn't agree with the way that I think about these things. So there would be utility in explaining it that way.
I contest the idea that anybody would say to the Civil War, I wish there was the same or more death.
Sure.
So it's it's like an empty statement. Okay, yeah, you would have preferred it would have gone better. Duh, so would have everyone. What's the point in bringing that up?
All right, sure. That's where we're at on the video here. So I guess let's see where they go with it.
Here to you, Vosh. I'm here. I would be a time traveling saint. And I've traveled here to you, Vosh. I'm here now to work my saintlyhood. And you're going to bear witness to it. And,
all right.
And it's going to change your life.
Then convince me, if you will.
Well, I don't want to convince you. Okay, we can talk about that, but I just want to acknowledge what's happening here. First, I'm just trying to introduce myself, and I'm trying to compare my approach to these general problems to your approach. And then you've led us down this path where now you're saying this incredibly complex thing, a war, with a million different factors leading into it. Then you say, well, what would you have done? Which is a trap. Anything I say, you can point to the other 99,000 factors that caused it and say, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then we can play ideological whack-a-mole. But I don't want to do that. One, because I don't think debate is particular. I don't want to debate you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just don't see the point then of discussing some
very similar to the conversation we just had,
historical event, and saying, you know, if your commentary in this is why
we are good avatars.
I was gonna say I didn't come here to defend this rhetoric, but I guess I came here to parrot it.
Would have preferred a nonviolent solution. I'm sure a great many would have. My issue is that, is the case with, sure, if it could be done, I don't think it could be. That's the issue. I don't think anyone else.
Yeah, so it's an idealism thing. That's fine. So my point is not to convince you or anybody that there was an alternative. My point is to say, I think there's a different lens through which we can look at historical events that is less us versus them, less good versus evil, with always positioning myself as the good, which you just admitted is not necessarily a good idea to always do that, and to say, what if we look at the way the slaves were freed? In one lens, you can see it as a great success, and in another, you can see it as a momentous failure in how that was accomplished. And I think it's a little self-protective to say, well, no, that's the only way that could have happened.
Well, I
don't know that that's
true.
Can
I frame it one other way real quick? Whenever I debate theists, as the atheist, the burden of proof is on them to establish and justify their God claim. That's how I'm sort of looking at this. If he's going to say better way could have been reached in order to accomplish the end of slavery, I'm going to say, okay, well, given what we know already, which is that the Civil War is what happened, and that's what the people at the time came to the conclusion had to happen, what is your alternative? The burden of proof rests on you. Please provide an argument. And if you're then going to say, well, That's not what I meant. What I meant was it could have happened better. We should have wanted it to happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's maybe I'm too autistic or something. I don't know. Like,
I think this idea is really hard for a lot of people to get. He's trying to say that really, all I want from you right now is to not even convince you, but to say that we don't need to frame these things in a way by saying like this had to happen this way because they were the bad guys and the good guys had to do what the good guys had to do. And I don't need to convince you of how this would have happened. I just need to get the point across that that we were all that both sides were part of the same country that made the decision to go to war with each other.
Whoa! You don't think the Confederates were the bad guys?
That's not relevant to this point.
Well, it is because you just
said both sides made a decision, and they did. I'm not describing good or bad to either side in this moment. I'm just talking about what actually happened.
Made by the Confederate States of America, a separate country. Like, this is why I don't like.
A decision was made by them, and then a decision was made by the North.
Correct.
Well, correct. I'm not saying this side did the right thing and this side did the wrong thing. When I'm saying this, I'm just talking about what happened.
Well, but given that the Confederate States of America were making their action in defense of slavery, which I'm sure you would agree is an immoral practice, can you not condemn them as the clear, like, a morally evil aggressor in this regard? It's like when I talk to people about Russia, Ukraine. It's like, well, there were tensions on both sides. It's like, okay, except Russia invaded them. So, okay,
hang on though. Here's the thing. From my perspective, yeah, I think this is abhorrent, and I think it's terrible, and I don't want people to have slaves. However, from the South's perspective, they're defending their right to their economic prosperity by way of utilizing essentially tools. To them, slaves aren't people. So you're saying, hey, you need to free your slaves, and they're like, no, I don't have any reason to. Their position is
wrong.
Okay, but if you don't agree that you're wrong, you can't just go, okay, I'm going to hurt myself in favor of your idea, which I think is just objectively wrong. If you do not believe that, you cannot act on it, though. It'd be great if people could. It would be great if people could just do the right thing, despite...
Yeah, I agree. That's why I say we had to go to war. Like,
Wait, you're moving it back to something else. The question that you asked me, I was answering, and this is irrelevant to that part too. And also, look, all I'm trying to say is that you're saying, do you think that the other side is objectively wrong? It's subjectively wrong. From my subjective perspective, sure it is. But if somebody, like if I have robots doing work for me, and somebody says, hey, you can't have those robots do that, I'd be like, what? They're literally not fucking people. You can go fuck yourself. I'm not going to...
There's some Star Trek episodes I could direct you towards for research on that.
Sure, and the people that would have pushed back in that Star Trek episode would have felt like, there's literally no reason for you to try to take from me what you're taking from me. I'm not hurting anybody.
So in that regard, I would say then the stronger argument should win out. And I don't know what the argument in regards to like the continued dehumanization and owning of other human beings is. That's stronger than
is that they don't think that it's because that they don't think that they're people.
That's not an argument. That's not an argument.
Yes, it is.
Like they're not. That's feelings. No, that's not an argument. Saying
no.
I don't think like me saying this is a human being. Their biology is exactly the same. They show the exact same responses. They have the exact same synaptic responses. They are in every way identical to a human being. External from like sociological factors, they would develop exactly the same as a human being. And then them saying, well, I don't think so. That's not a fucking argument.
Okay, look, here's the thing, though, is that you're saying, I don't agree, and you have really, really good reasons for not agreeing. I agree with you. I think that you're correct. The problem is, when this happens, is that you are ignoring the fact that the other person is doing the exact same thing. How right you think that you are?
No. I'm not ignoring it. I am acknowledging it and rejecting the legitimacy of their argument because I see mine as stronger and more legitimate. That's what everyone does.
And hang on, I'm slaughter the dog. I'm not defending slavery. I'm defending the idea that somebody.
What you were doing.
I'm defending the idea that somebody cannot just act against their own interests if what they're doing they think is correct to be doing.
Yeah,
If
no, I don't think you're defending slavery, for the record. Whoever said that is dumb.
they said I would even be willing to defend slavery in
Oh, for
order to
fuck's
defend
sake.
Mr. Girl.
This is why nuance is dead in politics, by the way. This is what you people ruin Israel Palestine. I can't advocate, like, fuck you.
It was so great before those people. I'm just kidding. Um, but just the idea that I guess a better example, if I receive information and proof that let's say you have a child and I know for a fact it has been proven to me objectively, God came down from heaven and proved himself to
All
be
right.
real and imbued me with the knowledge that that is not actually your child and it has been switched out with a demon that if allowed to grow to fruition will end the entire human race. um, I would say, hey, I have to do something about this. I gotta basically kill this demon. But you'd be objectively wrong by every single metric from my perspective in defending your child's life. I'm like, you don't understand. You're wrong. Like there's like you shouldn't even be arguing with me in the slightest because I'm trying to save everybody here. You're just wrong. So you should be just letting me kill this demon that you think is your child because you're wrong. You would be incapable of allowing me to do so because you don't
Of
think
allowing
that.
to kill the child?
To what you would be the child, but to me, I know is actually this like demon that God has shown me to be a demon.
Nope, I'll bite the bullet on that. If in a way you could prove objectively beyond a shadow of a doubt, which again we're talking about
But
magical.
I'm the only one that
curriculum,
knows. I
Okay.
can't prove it to you.
Then I don't think that you, in and of yourself, are morally in any way compromised from killing that child. No. So clip me.
Right.
I'm gonna get clipped.
But you also being objectively wrong about whether or not that is your child would be morally justified in protecting it, is what I'm saying.
Sure, but I don't know what relevance this has to like when it comes to things like Southerners arguing towards slavery. Like we're getting way outside like the realm of like normative epistemology. You know what I mean?
Well, like all I was trying to say is that, like you're saying, of course these people are in the right. These people are in the right. From our subjective
No,
standpoint,
I'm
of
not.
course they are.
No, I'm not. I'm saying I can make stronger arguments for why they're in the right than the South can for why they're in the right.
But we can do that because we know that they were wrong. That slaves were
Nope.
just human beings.
Nope. I can make arguments back. I could have made arguments back then for why they were wrong. There were people making arguments back then for why they were wrong. They were called abolitionists.
Yeah, but did they not advocate that slaves were just people and we shouldn't be enslaving people?
Some of them did. Some abolitionists advocated that slaves were like, or that black people were like a lesser race of people, but we should still treat them equally. Like, I don't know. There was a lot of fucked weird racism back then. The point
like,
being, like,
I get it, man. I'm vegan. I can't convince fucking anybody that I'm right, and I think that I'm just correct.
I mean, no, I'll cede that one to you 100%. Morally speaking, vegans are as close to objectively correct as I can perceive. If we object to causing pain to humans, there's absolutely no reason to object to causing pain to any other living thing. I think the only thing that I have an objection to when it comes to veganism is just the practical application or the ability for the average person to like become a vegan given the current environment in regards to like food supply.
Oh, well, I mean, if everybody decided to be tomorrow, then all the food industries would be forced to focus on producing the same kind of super tasty food that I eat. Like, I'm fat.
Well, yeah,
I
but
eat
I
food
don't.
that tastes
I
good.
mean, you know that's not going to happen like tomorrow.
Well, I'm just saying that would be like the thing. That would be like the short and easy answer. But this is all aside for just saying that. Like, it's not like I don't get it. It's not like I don't understand that. I'm just saying that if you think that you're correct, you have to act as though you are correct. That's it. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yes, but we also have to interact with each other in society. So, like, you know, I think that everybody has the right to argue against people. If someone thinks they're correct, I think someone else has the right to say, no, you're not correct, and here's why.
Right. So I guess what I'm getting at is that even though I firmly believe this, and that I think that, and I understand that the number of animals that are killed each year is like, billions upon billions upon billions, I would not be justified in um, enforcing my worldview upon other people who don't agree with me by killing them, right?
Ethically, morally, I think you are actually.
Oh, all right. Well, then I understand where you're at. That's fair.
Yeah. No, I think if you've reached an ethical conclusion that you can defend with like rational arguments, I think that like at a certain point
Yeah, I
you
mean,
need to do
rationally,
whatever you
sure. Whether
can.
it's agreeable or not, you could just say like, well, look, you could just take out every human that's not vegan, and we would stop the amount of pain and suffering
Well, I don't know
multitudes and
about
multitudes and multitudes
yeah,
over, based on the arguments that you've laid out that like if this is wrong, then this is wrong. So we're just
for
getting rid
sure,
of like
but
the predatory, scary humans at that point. But I don't think that. That's not what I advocate for.
yeah,
But okay, I have a much
I
better
just
understanding of where you're at with that.
in order to bite, I think I have to bite that bullet in order to be able to say like yes, regardless of and you can correct me if I misunderstood, but in order to say yes, if I believe that you shouldn't hold slaves and my neighbor believes that you should and they hold a slave and we live in two houses like alone at the end of the world, I think I am morally obligated to kill that person or free the slave or both.
Okay. Then everything else you said makes a lot more sense. I'm glad that I took way too much time to flesh this out because now I
I'm
perfectly understand
sorry.
where you're at. No, it's on me. I let us down this. I'm gonna play it though.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good.
It's meaningless. If your prescription here is that any
not
historical...
prescribing
Hold
anything.
on. If your prescription here is that we should approach viewing these historical events through the understanding that there was a better way, you could say that about anything under any circumstances. Any set of interpersonal or geopolitical circumstances could have gone better than the way it does. Nothing is ever
Absolutely,
perfect.
absolutely. You can
So-
always do it better.
so
My problem
the-
is that we do not look at it through that lens.
Everybody looks at it that way. Nobody in the ramp up to the Civil War was thinking, all right, there's only one way of doing this. We're doing the Civil War, or we're not doing shit. Nobody thought that
No,
way.
I'm saying looking back.
Looking back,
I bet
is
there
no
were some
point
people
in
that thought
thinking
that.
of other ways things might have gone through the lens of, well, what if we talked them out of it because that didn't happen? People tried, They tried. They left the Union. They made state constitutions specifically
don't- I
enshrining
don't-
the right to own black folk. I mean,
I don't agree that there's no point in looking back at past events in your life, or interpersonally or globally, and thinking about what you could have done better.
well, what could they have done better leading up to the Civil War?
This is the same thing you just tried to box me into. You know all of the vectors that pushed us exactly where we went, and I agree with you in a sort of fatalistic sense. There was no other way because there's only one reality that can happen, and that's the one that did. And so any factor I say, well, what if we nudge this one this way? You're going to say, well, what about this, and this? And it's a debate. I don't want to debate you about that specifically. If you want to, I mean, it's really a value difference. Like,
What is the
If
value
you-
difference?
that I believe in taking a narrative that we all have, that we're all raised to believe, that abolition was it was a success.
What is a
And
success?
do you agree with the premise that the Civil War and the freeing of the slaves is generally viewed by Americans as a good thing that happened?
It was better than the alternative, sure.
Do you believe that Americans generally believe that there's a dichotomy of the alternative, continuing slavery, and what happened, war?
Yeah, because that's the dichotomy. It again, like, what do you want kids in history class to go, well, it would have been better if they'd settled everything peacefully.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah, it's just that's such a stupidly naive thing to say that I feel silly even repeating it. It's like, well, of course, obviously, yes.
Well, your delivery
that's
was
how I
not
felt
very
as well.
courteous to me, but
Well, of course.
that is
This what he said. But it the way that it comes out doesn't really feel like that.
I mean, from my perspective, that is what I heard. And granted, you're more familiar with Mr. Girl, so you probably heard it a different way based on that. But
Sure.
having only been exposed to his rhetoric right fucking now, that is kind of what it sounded like he said was, we shouldn't have killed all those people. Well, why not? well, I don't know, we just shouldn't kill people.
Well,
Like
I
part
think
of
it
the
was, I
why
don't
not
know.
from my perspective is, well, because this was the alternative. Because there were better options available. Because we could have done this. Because this was also possible. You know what I mean? Like that's my evaluation.
Yeah, well, I mean, the why not was probably just because people dying if they didn't have to was bad. Just probably not something that you really have to say when we say it could have
I
went
don't
better.
yeah.
This
I
is
mean, yeah,
the understanding.
obviously.
Yeah, that's why.
But
course
That
it
is
would have
what
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't. Do you think anybody on Earth, save a racist or like a heritage first type, would disagree that death in the Civil War was probably bad and that it would have been better to free the slaves without having death?
Sure, but I think the
That's
issue
where
here is look at how much contention there
that's my
is
issue,
if you even say it though.
huh?
The if you do say that though, something that's so obvious and that everybody would just agree with,
The
the
contentious part
response
is
the response isn't yeah. It's all this that has happened
well,
between
the
them two
contentious
and between
part
you
is
and
why did he feel the need to bring it up? If it's something everybody already agrees with, then it should be inferred.
well, he told them that, and it was the same thing that I told you. He's just trying to say like this is how I think about things.
I guess.
Instead of I don't want to be the guy that says, well, this is just how it had to be. I want to be the guy that says, I wish it had been better. I want that to be my response to it, and my response to it. I don't want to be the kind of person who responds to this kind of event by saying there was no other way.
I gotcha.
what I
better
say.
if they
The idea that there's a value in doing that, instead of the other way.
I know. See, that's where I'll disagree. I don't think there's a value in saying I wish that we hadn't had to kill a bunch of
Well-
people because at that point you're stating the obvious. Like the grass sure is green today. It's like, yeah, it is. Okay.
Okay.
That's like it to me. And again, I don't know if I'm being genuine when I say this. I don't know if it's an autism thing. I don't know if I'm reading this.
I don't
like,
think so. I think that's how
weirdly.
most people think, but I genuinely think that there is value in stating the obvious in a lot of different areas of life. I know this because I know that I have had to
then-
do it, and other people have had to do it.
But the obvious that death is bad. That one I would even argue in ways is intuitive.
No, in the exact specific way that he did it. I think that if you make it more reductive, then you're going to decrease the value in saying that when we approach the subject.
That's fair.
It could have just, yes, if there'd been no war and if everything ever could have gone well. But I don't understand what utility looking at this. It doesn't bring us any better understanding of the events at hand, certainly, because it's not pertaining to any specific fact set. You're just talking about it in the abstract. Maybe things could have gone better.
You see, from my point of view, if I'm looking at a country that is increasingly polarized and divided, we agree that that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm talking to various political people, and I have my own tiny little platform, my soapbox. That for me, if I'm worried about violence breaking out in the street and people increasing animosity that people have been taught historically must lead to violence, or it will lead to their worst fear. It will lead to slavery, it will lead to the Holocaust, it will lead to Jim Crow laws, or gay people being stoned to death, or I guess conservatives are afraid of the same things, but happening to white people or happening to Christians, or
No
sort
doubt.
of de-recognition, or being having communism, having their rights taken away, or whatever. Those are the things that they're afraid of. If everybody approaches this with that lens, which I believe is a false dichotomy, which you're saying is just historical truth, then you can see the utility for me of bringing up various events like the Holocaust and saying like turning it over and being like, maybe the way that the Germans were defeated, or that the Jews were, what remained of them were freed, didn't go that well. Like we won, but like 50 million people died.
What superior military strategies would you have employed on the Western Front to have mitigated the loss of life?
Yes, I understand you I understand. It's the same thing you just did with the Civil War. I understand that you are well versed in all of the factors leading up to war.
I don't. I think
And that
he's
if
perceiving like a strategy here that doesn't exist. I don't think what Vosh like. And again, I'm not trying to defend the rhetoric or interpret it. It's just like I guess I am trying to interpret it. I don't think that the reason Vosh is asking is because he's like got all of his data points and his historical points like ready to counter him. I think just like when you say something like to someone like I mean to myself when you say something like, well, the Civil War was pretty bad. We shouldn't have had to kill all of those people to free the slaves. There's part of me that goes, yeah, we shouldn't have. But what else would you have done, you know? Like
Okay,
yeah. And I don't want to
so
go down this hole again,
no,
but
no, no,
like
no.
I'm
I
just
think
saying
that
I don't
Vosh
think
missed the
that
thing that you missed. He said it like blatantly. He said that when our country's this divided, I think that looking at things through this lens of that this is the way it had to be isn't good because what he said is you have to have this bloody conflict or your worst fears will come to fruition isn't a good idea to be putting out there when everybody's this divided.
I think given the end result of ideologies like Nazism, you have a responsibility to make sure that people know what we're up against.
Sure. You can know what we're up
That
against without thinking that the only way to solve the issue that we have with neo-Nazis in this country is that we have to kill them.
nobody said that.
But if okay,
I
but
don't
what he
even think
said,
that Bosch said that. However, if we were talking like, well, at the time of like 1940 whatever,
no,
the
no, no,
only way
it's still getting missed. Saying that I don't think it's good to tell people that if given the climate right now, I don't think that talking about the lens being either there's a bloody conflict where lots of people die or your worst dreams come true
nobody's
is
doing that
good.
here.
This is the value in saying that the Civil War could have gone better, or using the Holocaust example that he did, is if you talk about it in this way, then it helps people see that the conflicts that we're in right now don't have to end up going down that same path.
On the contrary, I think that framing the conflicts that we're in now directly around historical events
Whether that's
properly
true or not,
aligns people
this is what
to
he
the
thinks.
gravity of the events that we're facing. Sure.
Sure, which you can disagree with it, but I think that you can understand why you would think that there's, if you believe that there would be a utility in preaching that. Yes?
I mean, I preach like anti-violence. I am not myself a violent person, but I mean, I mentioned it earlier, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. I don't know what Ukraine. I'm not going to tell Ukraine to roll over on their back and cede to Russia. I'm going to tell them to fight if they want to fight. That's yeah.
Sure. But I guess I'd just say, like, you understand, given the understanding that that's what he thinks, you understand the utility in him expressing that, correct?
No,
Oh.
no, I don't, and I just don't. I think that that's going to be a subjective thing.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We can move on.
Yeah.
Any one that I choose, you will bring up 20 more. That's not my point, though.
If you're
my
interested in the mechanisms by which you could avoid large scale conflict altogether, I think those are worth looking at. But I don't think you have to, I don't know, pontificate alternate histories in order to arrive at that. If you don't want there to be another civil war, then that's fine. But then the question is, well,
I
how do
don't
you
want there to
avoid
be
that?
another civil war.
Well, then how do we avoid that then? I don't want another civil war.
Well, I think that dehumanization is a necessary step in war. And what I'm concerned about is I see that happening when people disagree about political topics. I'm not specifically pointing a finger at you, but I think the discourse on all ends, particularly the further you are toward whatever side you're on, becomes increasingly punch Nazis, fuck Antifa, BLM's a terrorist organization, whatever the talking points are.
Do you think that
And-
rhetoric is comparable?
Yes.
How so?
It reads like war propaganda. I just think it's the same thing that you have to convince people of in order to convince them to kill another person. And I don't think we should be doing that.
Well, should it
And
come
so
down
that's why
to it?
that's why pedophilia is so attractive to me. Because it's they're the most dehumanized group. And so if I can get people to empathize with pedophiles, if I had my time machine, this is what I would have fucking been doing before the Civil War. Then if you can empathize with a pedophile, you can empathize with anybody. Or a Nazi. I guess the
I
right
don't know that
hates pedophiles
necessarily
and the left
true,
hates
but
Nazis.
I understand where he's coming from.
I think that disliking pedophilia
It's a consistent idea that may not bear out in reality. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go. Captured it exactly how I thought
Sure.
it. Yep.
is a fairly bipartisan affair, or at least both groups play at it.
There's not a hyper fixation. There's a fixation. I don't think the right likes fascism either, but there's a fixation on the right with pedophilia, and there's a fixation on the left with Nazis.
I think that these are largely incomparable, in large part because, first of all, I think a lot of the right's opposition to it is projection, a la QAnon. And second of all, I think that opposition to Nazism is quite justified in almost any form that it takes, constrained only by pragmatism. In fact, I struggle to imagine a scenario in which you would not want children being raised to the tune of fuck Nazis, young people taught why they should hate Nazis in school. Seems like an extraordinary virtuous thing to instill in people.
Well, because
Antifa,
of the reason you
on
just
the other
said
hand,
yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you are raised to say fuck Nazis, you're being raised to believe you are not and cannot be a Nazi.
No, I think it's possible to hate Nazis while being sort of understanding of the sociological precursors to it. You know, what leads to it, what internal traits to fight against or to
When I
to
see
purge.
hate groups, the groups who hate Jews or black people or gay people, I do not see the kind of socio-political, economic empathy that you're describing there.
Yeah,
To
because I don't
me,
think those are comparable. There's no sociological justification, not prescriptively, for hating Jews, black people, gay people. There's a very good one for hating Nazis. Actually, there are quite
That
a
would
few.
be my.
So I don't
That
think
would be
I'm
my
saying
big
that if you
sticking
hate
point
black
as well.
people, if you especially let's say black looters, that hatred is usually not accompanied by a complex understanding that were you a black poor person with the same social and economic and political pressures on you, you might actually do the exact same thing. To me, hate and empathy are mutually exclusive. I guess just that maybe it's just a semantics thing, but I think raising people to hate Nazis precludes raising people to empathize with our boogeymen.
I think you can empathize with the circumstances by which people become them. But I think there's something categorically different between bigotry against black people or Jews and hating Nazis. In that, at least by the normative standards most people hold themselves to, you can logically justify hating Nazis. Opposition
that's
to
not
or
why-
even violence against them is something that you can construct philosophically and defend at academic levels if you want to. For black people and Jews, that just doesn't track. It's usually biases or just emotional hatred that really justifies their beliefs.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think there are legitimate reasons to dislike black people or Jews
What would those
statistically.
be?
Yeah, that was
I
a
think
weird
it comes down
fucking
to
thing to
a
say.
combination of being taught to hate,
Shit.
taught to not empathize.
Let me go back. I was
You-
just
you don't
I
have- you
just
don't
sent,
have to
I just sent
pause
my
every
wife a
time.
message. No, I just didn't hear what it was.
I actually just sent my partner a message too.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Black people
No,
or Jews.
he's-
What were those?
Statistics there are
Is it here or back more?
Go back like 10 more seconds and I think you'll get it.
Philosophically and defend at academic levels if you want to. For black people and Jews, that just doesn't track. It's usually biases or just emotional hatred that really justifies their beliefs.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think there are legitimate reasons to dislike black people or Jews
What would those
statistically.
be?
Well, I think it comes down to a combination of being taught to hate, taught to not empathize, and then taught to
I think that's the kind of answer that you don't expect somebody to say after that.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't think.
I mean, it's not
It.
a it's not a this feels good reason, but like if like what reason do you have? What reason does this person have to be racist? Like, oh, ever since they were born, that's all they were taught. Like, oh,
I
that
would
does
not
make
call that a
sense.
legitimate reason. I would call that an understandable reason. But legitimacy to me as a word means that it is credible and justified,
I think that
if that makes sense.
most people have no, well, not even every single person does no, like nobody has the ability to question things that they're taught up into a certain age, and then even after that age, they have to, you have to be pushed in certain directions to question what you were taught, and not everybody has the capacity to just like reason their way out of those things. Unfortunately, some people are
I disagree
stupid
with
and
that.
don't think for themselves. You've never met
No, I
anybody that
disagree with
just
that.
doesn't think is like you're just
Yeah, but
like,
I don't
wow,
think that's
you're
because they lack the capability for the most part.
uh,
I do think there are a select few people who genuinely like their, whatever their mental capacity isn't, it doesn't allow for that, but I think the
sure.
average fucking human can reason through most of the shit that you and I talk about. Absolutely. I have more faith in humanity than that.
Well, as long as you're using that language, then sure, yeah, I think most people can. Sure.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess just a lack of empathy and a channeling of blame onto those people. I'm
Oh,
not
that
saying
I
that
don't
like,
disagree with, but that can't be prescriptively
but
justified. You could only say like why somebody is that, but
well,
you
that's what
couldn't
I'm saying is
argue in
I
favor
don't
of it.
the mechanism by which you're saying people should be raised to hate Nazis is the same way people are raised to hate blacks and Jews too.
Not at all. They're very, very different.
I guess I
I
just
disagree
we
with
might have to
Vosh
just
there.
agree to disagree. I believe if you tell
Okay.
your kids to hate,
It is the same.
The mechanism is the same. The
Yeah.
difference is the outcome of, if like being raised to be a Nazi versus just being black. Being raised to hate Jewish people versus being raised to hate Nazis, I think are two very fundamentally like morally different things. But the process is, I don't know that you could. I mean, I don't think Nazis go to like
Yeah, they don't
synagogue
have
or
a
anything.
specific playbook. Yeah.
I don't mean like that, but like there's nothing distinct about the process that humans take in information. I don't in that regard, I don't think so. There you go. There's my one Vosh disagreement for this thing.
I prefer to frame it as your one step across the Mr. Girl bridge, but sure.
All right, fine. You can have that.
Most mostly because that's a much funnier way for me to frame it.
That's
somebody,
why I'm letting
they
you have it.
probably will.
Well, then how can you prescriptively justify hating Jews or black people? So not explain why people hate it, because that's a sociologist's job, why are people the way they are? But prescriptively argue, why should they feel this way or the other? How could you do that with a minority group? Because I can do it easily with Nazis. Nazis' political views make it actually quite easy to hate them.
If you, I mean, any group of people is going to do things that make it easy to hate them.
Prescriptively?
I don't think it. I don't know what the difference is here because you can just look around and see any group you see. There's going to be a fuck ton of people who
I
hate
feel
that
like
group. And if you ask them why,
that's a
they'll
pretty important distinction. I don't know if he just doesn't understand the terminology, but like the difference of understanding why someone does hate something or someone as opposed to why someone should hate something or someone, that is a difference. You would agree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I don't know if like the conversation might be getting to him or whatever. I don't know, but like that kind of what Vosh is getting at here, and that is kind of needed to understand his argument.
I gotta see where this goes before I can say. By
Sure,
the
sure.
way, throughout our conversation, I keep meaning to bring this up. There's sort of a grab bag of me giving my own ideas and Mr. Girl's ideas as I
Sure.
understand them to be. I've tried to do a good job of saying like I don't even disagree with this, but like or like trying to pepper it in. But
Yeah.
if you ever go back
I've been
over this,
noticing.
not
No,
all of
I've been
these things are my
noticing.
ideas. Okay.
No, I at least have been noticing that. Like the nose, like I've never thought like from my perspective, my job here was to give you my perception on Mr. Girl and his ideas as I absorbed them via this video, and your job is to either interpret what he said or defend him in some regard. Which, like, yeah, I don't hold. If I wanted to have a conversation with you about your stuff, we would have the YouTube video off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Um.
I don't think that at all,
Also, though,
unless you explicitly state it.
I've actually have several times where I've like strongly disagreed with him as well, which I hope gives me credibility when I am backing him up. Like I have like a 1 hour long video of me arguing with him about ADHD because I think that he had brain rot about it.
But it shouldn't, but it does. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it should imply that I'm not blind to bad arguments by him.
Yeah, but I don't think that the virtue of you disagreeing with him makes your arguments more legitimate. That's what I meant.
Okay.
It shouldn't, but it does.
Oh, sure. So some people's fandom does not allow them to disagree with the person that they are a fan of at all.
Welcome. Well, all those people need to join VGG because
They can't. They're part of DGG.
Have you ever heard Voss talk about video games? Dude is an actual brainlet.
I think mostly just the Metroid game here. My buddy Tuna can talk about games pretty hardcore. He's doing a whole series about what makes a Souls-like.
He's got some opinions on Skyrim that need to be corrected forcibly if necessary.
I can't play it. I've tried like 4 times. After 20,000 hours of Morrowind and like 10,000 plus hours of Oblivion, I'm done.
That's fine. That's fine.
I played Elder Scrolls.
You did your duty, soldier. You did your duty, comrade. Thank you.
I'll be able to tell you why, and some of the things.
And let me tell you, you motherfuckers that hopped into Skyrim have no idea what it's like to spend 5 hours walking to a destination.
Hey, mate, I do. I played Morrowind too, but I just wanted to show off the ink real quick.
Did you play Morrowind?
I was not old enough at the time, but I did retrospectively. And while, like, of course, I found elements of it tedious. In terms of an artistic project, the scope of it as compared to the dev team to me has just always been incredible. Part of the reason that I shill for Todd Howard as opposed to like a lot of the other people. I mean, I don't like him generally speaking lately, but part of the reason I've always been on his side is Morrowind. Like that is a fucking accomplishment, and I think that he always deserves to be proud of that.
It might be the most ambitious game that ended up being successful I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Despite
the glaring flaws of combat.
Does everybody watching know that it was only made by 3 people?
I doubt it. I didn't even know that.
It was a side project. It was their side project.
Insane. So my niece played Skyrim. Like that was one of her favorite games when I met her. And I pull out the Morrowind map and I was like, just so you know, like, and it's huge, like the physical map. And I was like, going this far would take you like 10 minutes at least on the map. And a lot of it's by foot. Funny enough, I put over 20,000 hours into that game,
want to talk about the map,
and I never did the main quest. Daggerfall? I never played that.
So the map is procedurally generated, but I believe that it is roughly the size of the UK.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
IRL side. Yeah, it's like, yeah. So, anyways. Vosh is stupid about video games. That was what I was... Hope that lends me legitimacy.
Things they say won't be true.
But what if they so I guess what I'm asking you fundamentally is, do you think there's a difference between a good thing and a bad thing, or a good argument and a bad argument?
I don't think there's a difference between good hate and bad hate.
Okay,
I think that's where our disconnect is. So you think it is okay to not empathize with Nazis and to hate them, and I don't.
A slave's hate for his master then is to you the same as the master's hate for his slave?
No, to say they're the same. They're not the same because you just changed the roles, so they're not the same at all. Of course they're not.
That's hate.
I'm saying
both cases there's hate between them. Is that not the same?
That's not a fair question.
Is it? I thought you just said that all hate is the same. I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
No, I said
he said there's no good hate.
There's a difference between good hate and bad hate.
So do you think those are both bad hates?
Yeah.
Okay. But you think there's a difference between them?
A difference in how easy it is for me to empathize with one versus the other? For sure. It's a lot easier to empathize with a slave hating their master, obviously.
I feel like your association between hate and empathy is tenuous at best. I think it's possible to hate something while still being empathetic. In fact, I think empathy can actually enhance hate to an extent because it demystifies the person and it makes you more familiar with or at least more receptive to why they might be what they are, which can only throw the terrible nature of their choices further into the limelight. I don't think
Okay,
there's
so do
necessarily
you have empathy for white supremacists?
by empathy, what do you mean?
Well, it doesn't matter what I mean. We're both using
Yes,
the
it
word
does.
already fine until now. My question is like, do you have empathy for white supremacists?
I think
And you're asking me why, because you're going to say, do I have like a scientific neurobiologist like
I think the
dissecting
qualification
understanding
of
of them? And like,
terminology would do
I know you
wonders
have
for
that,
this debate,
but
just as a side.
I don't
Just-
think Mr.
that's
Girl would
not-
have contested it if it came up in the beginning. Or Mr. Girl would just say, I want you to define empathy and then tell me if you would apply it to white supremacists.
Yeah, no, I mean from either side. I wasn't saying from him,
Yeah.
from Bosch, from both of them, it would have done wonders towards the communication because I think in a lot of ways they were talking past each other. Like obviously our disagreements here have sort of displayed that. I don't think that you and I are like morally permissive of Nazis in any way, but the terminology that is being used here is to some confusing.
Yeah, I think so. The yeah, I think that it would be helpful to clarify the terms, especially when Mr. Grill is new. He didn't like this thing where people would, like I said, Bosch was using empathy, and Mr. Grill was basically like, I'm going to define it the way you've been using it this whole time. So, in every other way that you and I have used it and understood each other perfectly fine, continue to use it in the same intuitive way
So
and
is
answer
that
it based on
is
that.
that what he meant by it doesn't matter what it means?
Yes, yeah. That's why he's
Okay,
saying,
so,
because he's saying the only
yeah,
reason
I
you're
don't-
asking that is to see if you can navigate away from how you've been using it to redefine it in a way that you could have empathy for the people you've said that you had, but not for this group.
Well, I don't think so at all. I think the fact that
That's what
there's
his
been-
suspicion is, I think.
Well, yeah, right. And I just think that there's been confusion around the terminology.
Right, sure. Because people in Twitch poll
I'm adding the
are pretty
boss
sneaky like
perspective,
this.
right?
Sure. But
Yeah, I just think he's trying to clarify.
I think it's almost like a premonition of like conversations to come from Mr. Grill, because people do that. People will ask for a definition after they've been using the word just fine, because when you try to call somebody out, they'll want to find a way to change it so that way they can say
Yeah.
the thing that they want to say now and still get away with saying everything that they said without there being any like problem. And
That's why
a problem.
that's why I said up top. I think
Yeah.
that like when you engage in it in that regard, it's like a rhetorical tactic. But if you can just up top say, all right, let's just establish some terms here. Like I'm a big fan of Matt Dillahunty. Like that's one of the things that he usually strives to do in his debate openings. He usually has a formalized opening, and that's one of the things that he'll do is say, I say this, I mean this. When I use atheist, this is what I'm referring to. Like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm pretty big on defining terms too.
I think it's so important because otherwise, you're right. If it comes up later in a debate, it can totally be and almost justifiably be interpreted as disingenuous because if the word was a problem before, why didn't you say it now?
Yeah.
But I also don't think that it's unfair if it comes up like the first time that he said empathy, if then Bosch had been like, okay, well, can we define that real quick? And then
Yeah.
Mr. Girl had said, well, I'm operating under this definition, and then Bosch could either accept or reject it. Like that's what you're supposed to do in that regard.
Yeah. I say that like that's why he did that there.
Yeah.
Because similar things come up for the same reason in
But
other
my question is,
conversations.
do you care?
I'm not as educated as you seem to think I am. There are a bunch of characteristics associated with empathy, some of which I feel for white supremacists and some that I don't. So empathy in that I understand they're humans with fallible decision-making systems. Empathy in the sense that I know if born in the wrong family in the wrong time, I could have had the beliefs they have. Certainly. But empathy...
You care about them.
Care about, yeah, I have to. You have to change their minds. But empathy, I think to you, I think you can have empathy for the Nazis as you bombed Dresden, I think that you could have empathy for the slave master while you break, his farming tools over his head and steal his clothes. I think you could have empathy for your oppressor as you slaughter them. I don't think, to me, maybe my definition of empathy is different from yours. It's a consideration of their humanity. But humans do things sometimes that make them worthy of death, at least in open conflict. I mean, if not through the judicial system. So we have different definitions, definitely.
Yeah, but that's not, I don't think that's much of a hindrance. I don't believe that people do things that make them worthy of death. I don't believe in the death penalty.
Not judicially, I agree with you. I think there are better ways there. But, you know, if Auschwitz-Birkenau is being staffed by Nazi guards who will open fire when Allied soldiers approach, I don't see any reason why it's morally wrong to crack a few off before you even approach the camp. Or knowing, for example, that there are supply lines that are, you know, feeding the Western Front that you could bomb and save yourself the trouble in the long run. There are plenty of things that you could do that are justifiable and involve death that are not judicial in nature. Warfare, the Civil War. I mean, they started that war, after all. Kind of brought it on themselves a bit.
And I think it would be better to admit to yourself that you're probably killing a large number of people who don't really deserve to die.
Sure, but deserving there is kind of a tricky word. The better question for me is there a better alternative which hurts fewer people? And with regards to the Civil War, my belief there is no. I think that by the time the North committed to military action, that was the best possible option. And likewise with Nazi Germany. We should have started off way earlier with that one, in fact.
Amen.
So I understand that's your belief.
Yeah? Oh, you said amen, didn't you?
I said amen to the idea that we should have started off sooner with the Nazi.
Sure.
But
do you...
I will absolutely see that is way easier to say now.
Yeah.
And that at the time they had some very clever ways of concealing their the atrocities they were committing while they were going on. And it wasn't really until the Allies invaded and started discovering these camps that they sort of learned the true gravity of and the extent of what the Nazis have been up to. That's why I think it was Churchill who said, you need to get a photographer out taking pictures of this because we need to make sure this never happens again.
Sure.
So I don't know that it's intentionally disingenuous. I do think that it's way easier to make that evaluation outside of the conflict. But in regards to slavery, I mean, there were American abolitionists.
Sure.
At the time that it was happening. So anyways, just a slight historical perspective. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Do you understand?
There's your other Mr. Girl Lane, by the way.
Well, I think that yours is inapplicable mostly. I don't know how you can make decisions if
whether you think it's stupid or naive. I'm asking, do you understand it?
Understand
do you understand? Do you understand? Yeah. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
I understand where you're coming from. I don't know how it can motivate your decisions though. I don't know what choices it would lead a person to. How would it influence their behavior?
My behavior?
If you had control over things, you know, I mean, if you had some meaningful power and you could influence the world, I mean, we all do, of course, in our own way, but maybe more. You know, there's never really the ideal option. There are shades of gray. And for me, it's just a matter of what the least gray shade is. I don't think there's an alternative. I feel that way about voting. I feel that way about ethics broadly. So, you know, do I wish things could have been better? Sure. But I know that there's probably not much utility in fixating on that past the point of no return. Right now, we don't need to have a civil war in the United States, right? I mean, we don't have to, I suppose. But one might happen, maybe. And if it is, then we should be ready for it, shouldn't we? And if it's not, then we should do what we can to prevent it. But I don't think people are gunning for it as though it's a
I was kidding, yeah. We don't have to.
Do you care about white supremacists or other extreme political opponents of yours beyond your ability to make them into you or like you?
Yeah, I would care about then their ability to hurt me and the people I care about.
Do you? I'm talking about a Captain Planet, Care Bear, Power Rangers. Care. You know what I'm asking you?
Care about?
Do you care about them the way you care about a stray cat on the street?
I suppose. Meowing. I hope they have good lives. I don't think there's any utility in their suffering.
Have an emotional care? Do you know what I'm asking?
It's just an emotional, do I feel for them? I suppose, I mean, they languish, I guess, in their ignorance. I think that's unfortunate. But I don't know how relevant it is. I mean, do you laugh? Do you not think they are ignorant with their white supremacy?
I think that if we were like dating or something, and you said, Max, do you care about me? And I said, you languish in your ignorance. I don't think you would say like, oh, he cares. So it's not a
Well, I wouldn't date a white supremacist, you know.
well, yeah.
And
I'm
if I
not,
did, I would tell them
that's
that they
not my
languish
point,
in
though.
their ignorance of their stupid ideology.
I'm saying
Why
Could
would you
not
just
do
break up with them?
Could not do the shoe on head thing. I'm sorry. Not I.
What's the shoe on head thing?
She married a conservative, and she's not. I think
Oh.
she's like ostensibly like a centrist, a left-leaning centrist.
I see. She was one of the first critics of Mr. Pearl.
Yeah, well, Shu is kind of like the anti-pedophile and that sort of in the larger sphere, so that makes sense. Not in terms of the legitimacy of the accusations, just for the sake of like transparency, but like that makes sense that she would follow that and be interested in it.
I called her out on Twitter because Mr. Girl wrote an article and she said something to the effect of like, I'm paraphrasing as fuck, but like it would be justified to like kill Mr. Girl with a hammer or something like that.
Yeah, she does tend to say shit like that. Vosh defends Shu on head probably way more than he should. I sort of have like a new leaning negative opinion. I think she focuses on the wrong issues, and to be honest, I respect her less for for marrying a Republican. Whether you want to condemn me for that or not, yeah.
Nah, I let me put it this way. I think it's fine that she did, but I find it very easy to empathize with why you would feel that way.
I think it's fine that she did in the sense that I would never ever like go up to her and say, you are not allowed to do this. I think that it's good to have freedom for who you love. I just think it's a shame that he has dumb political opinions. That's all.
Sure. And as far as me being upset by her tweet, I have this crazy idea that we shouldn't even if we were going to say it's okay to do calls for violence on social media, which I probably don't agree with, and I don't know if I could think of a situation where I would. Specific targeted individual calls for violence, never.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So I don't. Let me put it this way. I don't see anything wrong with the eat the rich, kill the landlords memes, but I don't know about direct incited calls to violence like you're referring, like individual, like this guy is a landlord and he lives here and here's where his family lives. Like no. But when it comes to like hyperbolic statements like that, I don't know that I
think if they're hard to take seriously, it's probably permissible, but I wouldn't endorse it either. Like I wouldn't. Sure. I don't ever really endorse the eat the rich thing, but I mostly take it as a
neither do I, but I definitely don't. Yeah, I don't hop out there and be like, "How fucking dare you!" No, it's a meme. There are some people who believe it though.
Yeah, this is just like a child lashing out at their parents kind of energy. Like
well,
I hate
hold on
you.
there. Let's not. I think there's I think as a leftist, I think there is a principled reason to object to land commodification.
I'm saying that I think that this
when people say that, yeah, I don't think it's a serious. I don't think it's a serious investigation of and commentary on like land commodification. No.
Yeah.
No.
I'm mad, so I'm gonna say.
I'm saying, do you care?
Fucked up shit.
Yeah.
I feel like the answer is no.
Well, I mean, caring has a lot of definitions, you know.
I'm using the one where you care about like a younger sibling, or you care about an old man who's trying to find a seat on the subway. Like the kind of care where, you know, it's not a close interpersonal relationship, but you care about their well-being and you want what's best for them.
My interest in their suffering begins and ends at points where I think it's politically expedient. Anything past that,
Amen.
I don't benefit at all from them being hurt. And as a general rule, I prefer people to be happy.
Okay. Do you see the difference between that and me saying like I care about Nazis and I care about their feelings and I want to, you know.
Well, it really depends on their feelings, I suppose. But the nebulousness of the term care is doing a lot of work here. I mean, you
could just see that I'm much more warm and fuzzy towards my political enemies or whatever than you are. Like
Sure.
just generally, we can,
Yeah.
we can acknowledge that, right?
I think my political enemies well deserve the scorn, you know.
Right, and so you see how that. So again, this is all just part of my introduction. That's
Yeah.
antithetical to what my channel is trying to do. I'm trying to say, you know, give me your Nazis, give me your radical Antifa terrorists, give me your Muslim terrorists, give me your white supremacist, whatever. Whoever's the furthest out, whoever thinks they're the most hated, pedophiles, everybody's welcome. Let's sit and talk. That's my channel, and it's not about trying to get people to switch sides. It's not about turning people against each other, and it's not about winning. So all that's just to explain where I'm coming from. As we, do you still want to discuss one of these three topics?
I'm not going anywhere. Sure.
Well, I was more asking if are you going to eject me, or are we?
No, I'm not ejecting you. I just
okay,
don't.
okay.
I just don't know. I mean, you know, you can treat it all with compassion if you want. I distinguish critically between good things and bad things. I actually think that's a very, very important distinction.
Yeah.
And
I think I don't as much.
right. Well, I guess that's a way of thinking of things. Sure. Yeah. With that in mind, though, I have no idea what kind of prescriptive statements you could ever make on any issue if you don't distinguish between good and bad things and just sort of ubiquitously believe all people deserve consideration regardless of the morality of their positions. I don't know where you'd go from there.
I guess yeah, that's just not my compass by which I would make prescriptive statements or have preferences. I guess I think more of it as preferences. Like, you know, if I see somebody riding their bike and then somebody says, "Do you want that person to get hit by a car?" I will say no, because I don't want it. It's not a philosophical stance. So
Only
I don't. Let's just see what happens.
Only if it is a scheme with my lawyer.
I feel like I can imagine Bush saying that.
Only if Saul Goodman tells me to.
Nice. I'm glad I watched that, so I understand the reference.
Yeah, I'm
So
not going anywhere.
do you want to pick one of these topics? Should we let the chat?
Oh wow, Vosh's chat looks like identical to Destiny's chat in terms of like the emojis and stuff at this point. Wild.
Yeah.
Pick one?
No, dealer's choice. What do you have the strongest opinions on?
Are you sure? I don't think I'm the dealer, but I get what you're saying. Well, I just talked to Destiny about gender for.
Oh yeah, that wasn't. That was just an observation.
I didn't think so. I was making a joke. Like, it's the chat.
Well, then perhaps out of respect for the people who watch both of our channels, the poor bastards, you should talk about BLM or something else.
Something else meaning pedophilia.
Or that.
Well,
that is technically something else.
I think your stances on pedophilia are going to be more controversial than mine. If you're still sticking to your, there shouldn't be. What'd you say? I've seen no moral or legal argument about why child porn should be illegal. And a lot of people think I'm a pedophile. So
I don't remember if Vosh addresses this, but if he doesn't,
like a little PR repair by arguing against.
Sure, but from the conversation that you and I had, though, I would say that if we're primarily concerned about like rhetoric and stuff, it was. I would agree with.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree. Just for the sake of transparency and full understanding. The argument that Vosh was making was directly in regards to the moral permissibility of owning child pornography as compared to the moral permissibility of child labor being used to produce goods in the West, because really break it down, it's both exploitation of children, so why do we have problem with one and not the other?
Yeah.
It's a stupid way to phrase the argument. However, it's kind of an undefeatable one at the same time.
It's not, but I think
well,
that
if
really...
if you're trying to argue against the immorality of exploitation of children, I don't understand what the difference is. But
I think that most people would say that sexual exploitation of children carries a greater weight than labor exploitation.
It's bodily exploitation either way. The only difference that's being placed on there is a subjective one.
No, it's the
Like,
long-term harm. Like if society coerces somebody to where they have to have a job, child or not, then it's probably like this could have been just like we're like, yeah, that's not great. That should be better. But if
no, I think
somebody
no. Whoa. I think there's a meaningful difference between coercing an adult into work and coercing a child into work.
Sure, I do too, but I'm just using an adult to remove to just focus on like what we think is bad here. I think if we force somebody to work who doesn't want to work, this is always bad, child or adult. However,
I would agree.
if you sexually exploit somebody, if you have sex with somebody who doesn't want to have sex with you, in by any meaningful ways, like if we want to call it like violent rape or just like coercive rape, whatever you want to say, this is always going to be a worse exploitation than forcing them to work.
I see it as exploitation regardless. I think that
but I'm saying that there's long-term effects on the person that are way worse.
There is I think that is also a subjective experience dependent on the individual.
I think that, sure, but this could be said for almost any comparative of things, but if we look at any amount of like research or data or just talk to people about it, I know a lot of people who really fucking hate their jobs. It would never compare it to being raped.
Yeah, honestly. But how many children do you know that spent their childhood in like a Nike work camp?
I bet it sucks.
Well, yeah, I bet it does, but
I bet you if somebody said like I could hurt you in this way and you could have the day off or you can go back into the factory, probably gonna go back into the factory if they could understand what that meant.
Yeah, but if the option is like,
I'm just saying one's worse than the other. That's it.
Starve to death. I see exploitation as exploitation. I'm a Marxist, so like in a sense, like
all forms of exploitation are completely equal.
No, but I object to all forms of exploitation equally.
Oh, I see. But okay, so if you had to pick between one or the other, you're probably gonna pick the later one, right?
If I had to pick, if you were making me do one or the other to a kid, I mean, obviously I would probably rather they work, but we're talking about the moral injunction of allowing this to happen.
Sure, I'm saying that this is the argument for it. Because, I mean, but the truth of the reason as to why is that people typically don't care about child labor that they don't see, but when people hear about child sexual abuse, they're going to care immediately no matter what.
Yes,
period.
that was the entire point of Vosh's argument. Like I said, I just don't think that he phrased it very well.
Yeah.
He has in the future addressed that specific stream and rephrased the argument in a much better way. I don't remember the phrasing, but like, yeah, no, I would.
Yeah, I mainly brought it up because you said that one of the issues that you had with Mr. Girl was like if he's talking about these things, then he should be saying it in a certain way that it's really good.
I'm glad you brought it up because it is a legitimate example of Vosh doing the exact same thing that I'm critical of. I'm critical of him for that, just as I am Mr. Girl. I am consistent in that regard, and thank you for bringing it up to demonstrate that.
Yeah. And then, to your benefit too, you're also here with me, charitably listening to my reasonings for the things that you don't like about Mr. Girl.
Yes.
So I respect that.
I think that my views on the subject are quite a lot.
Did you have something else? Did you
Did my mic ping? No.
Oh, okay.
Less controversial.
It could have just been them.
Believe. I think I was making a
very
spicy argument against unethical commodity consumption
that
has been wildly misinterpreted. Such is life.
Oh yeah, I know what argument you were making, but I've heard two quotes. Okay, let's talk about pedophilia because I'm getting ready to make a big video about pedophilia. I think in the next few months, and I think,
still waiting for it.
Chewing over some of the ideas with you.
I was about to ask you.
It probably won't.
Thanks you preempted it.
But he has put a ton of work into it and talked to a ton of people who work in the field of prevention, study, and research.
So. No, I was about to ask you. I was going to say, is that what you want to watch together next? But if it's, maybe once it comes out.
Oh, I have some other things that are a lot more contentious than this, at least insofar as the response has been. that I have staunchly defended many hours on and off stream. So
I
I'm
understand.
thinking through what I'm saying. Okay, so do you want to explain yourself, Ash?
Well, it's probably
Explain
nothing the
yourself!
community hasn't heard, and also probably nothing you've not heard. But
My
I
understanding
think
is that
it's
you were saying if
bad
we're
to
gonna
have sex with children. It's a hot
Yes,
take
I
in
know.
some circles, anime lovers and the like. But
That one might be controversial.
My
I don't
understanding is
know.
that your stance is that
We're trying to
if you're
empathize
gonna,
with Nazis. That's not a
say it's
take you
okay to
want them
use
to
indirectly use
hear that you
child
have,
slave
you know?
labor, then child porn is not that different,
my
and that
sta-
it's hypocritical.
my
to-
stance is that society has taken the easy route by denouncing an element of unethical consumption that they can all very easily agree is terrible, as it is.
Yes,
And
yes,
that they have been very, very deliberately silent in other ways in which children are hurt.
yes. You're saying they're both
Sorry
bad,
for
not
wasting
that they're both
time. I
good,
genuinely
obviously.
couldn't
That's
remember
correct.
if you
One
went
is
over
good.
it or not.
no, you're good.
Yeah,
And
I got that.
Quite happy that one of the two, at the very least, is currently criminalized.
Okay. Do you think owning child porn should be a crime?
Yeah, might as well.
Actually,
right?
real
We've
quick, if
already,
I could
we've already
extrapolate,
done
I would see to a world where both are viewed as equally disgusting and exploitative.
Oh,
To steel man a little bit.
that's fascinating. That is
I
a
think that-
wildly unpopular opinion.
Well, I mean, child labor. I don't think child labor being bad is an unpopular opinion.
I'm not. That wasn't the argument that you made.
No, what I'm saying is I would like a world to come about where people look at child labor and view it with the same disgust that they have towards child pornography.
Right,
How
and I'm
could
saying that's a
you-
wildly unpopular opinion.
Really?
Well, if it wasn't, we would live in that world, right?
Oh, I mean, I I guess that's true. When I asked you that, I was more thinking like if I presented this argument to someone, do you really think they would say that they disagree?
Yes.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'll have to take your word for it then.
Especially, well, it's actually kind of funny because especially since one of them, as a society, we really don't do much to stop, and the other one we do. So it could end up being that we're end up being permissible of both by being
No,
equally
that's what I'm
disgusted.
saying. I would rather we be permissible of neither, and that's what I advocate for. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't.
You don't agree?
I think that one is worse than the other one.
Okay.
So I'm
I
a
think they're
strict
both quite bad,
deontologist,
and they should. I know that's your fault,
and
not mine.
however, if I have to pick between two tragedies, I will go for which one is that. I only become a utilitarian briefly when I'm forced to pick between two tragedies.
See, and I wanted to tease you about this. Everybody's a deontologist until wartime or tough decisions, and then we're all utilitarians.
Well,
I'm just consistent about it.
I mean, no, I think that wrong is wrong no matter what. You never do the wrong thing if you can only pick wrong. So, literally, if I'm acting as a utilitarian, it's a fucking tragedy. That's how not utilitarian I am.
I mean, is murder wrong? Just real quick.
I probably wouldn't make a hard and fast rule that just
And
says
you're not a
murder wrong.
deontologist.
Yes, I am. It means
Is
that
murder
things are
wrong?
That's not how I would make my rule. My rule would be that it is wrong to murder somebody. Depending on how we're saying murder, I'm just going to say kill here. It's wrong to kill somebody unless they are infringing on my bodily autonomy or the autonomy of somebody that I have a reasonable duty to protect.
How do you define reasonable duty?
A reasonable duty?
Yeah.
So I would say that my duties work this way. First and foremost, I have a duty to myself, because if I don't fulfill the duty that I have to myself, then I cannot perform my other duties. My secondary duty would be the duties that I have to my family, because they are expected upon me, and I have agreed with them to perform certain duties for them, including protection when required. And then I would have a duty to my community, and then I would just scale it up and say the population of living beings at large. But it goes through that order. because
I would say I roughly follow the same thing, but I guess in my mind it's all sort of nebulously. I'm just such a loving guy, you know.
but
I
it's
want
not
all people to be.
that order isn't like some weird kind of form of deontology. It's just literally logistically, if I don't follow that order in tiered of applying duty, then the like I can't perform them. So it's just like logistics.
Well, in a practical sense, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
trying to, yeah, saying, well, I obviously think that harm towards humans is bad, and then someone, some idiot will turn to you and go, okay, so then you should go over and personally assassinate Vladimir Putin. Like, yeah,
Well,
that's retarded.
it's mainly because
Like,
my foundational belief is that everybody has the right to their own bodily autonomy, up until the point to where you're infringing on somebody else's. And so then my duty can kick in if I have a reasonable explanation to protect somebody. If somebody is threatening their bodily autonomy, I can kill that person to stop them from doing that.
okay.
Because they have forfeit theirs.
I guess just compared to every other deontologist I've spoken with, you have a more nuanced understanding of it. Everyone else like seems to understand hard and fast moral rules.
Yeah, most people just read Kant and then they go, "Okay, this is good."
Yep.
I
Yeah,
am a
Kant
deontologist.
is-
My moral system is made by me for me.
All right,
I take Kant's main principle that if I don't decide ahead of time what's right and wrong, then I'm a slave to my own like wants and whims. If I'm in the moment and I don't have a rule,
right about that.
yeah. So to truly be free, you have to set up rules for yourself in advance. Otherwise, you're just going to be performing what your like programming wants you to do, and I don't want to do that.
Well, and then I would say, as a hard determinist, the programming of the universe will do what it does anyway.
And it made me a deontologist.
The work on
I
that one. No
sure
sense in
guess it
undoing
did.
Okay. Let's go to other. Do you think pedophilia, to any extent, is a sexual orientation?
I'm not entirely sure what the DSM's definition of a sexual orientation is. I don't.
Well, let's
I
say
think
we're writing the DSM.
I think it's categorically different from heterosexuality, homosexuality, or anything else like that.
Do you think it is, to any extent, do you think it is the same as any of those things?
I mean, I suppose it manages people's attraction towards others, but apart from that, and I don't even think that's the critical point, right?
I hate how long he's taking to kill his
So
boss.
do you see any utility in labeling it as a sexual orientation?
No, I think it'd be the opposite of utility. The medical terminology is geared around the relationship between our brains and normative social behavior. Mental illnesses, after all, are defined as things that cause us harm in society. They prevent us from functioning normally. And I think that pedophilia, as you might guess, prevents one from functioning normally, to not put too fine a point on it. A sexual orientation should be something normal and healthy, but pedophilia can never be that. So a paraphilia is what it should be defined as. And I think that is what it's defined as presently.
I believe it is. Do you...
Just as a footnote, it's actually defined as a disordered sexual orientation and a paraphilia. It's goofy.
Do you
Yeah.
think that
That's
there
according to
is
the DSM-5.
I believe so. I know it's considered that by like the top expert in the field. Dr. James Cantor. Yeah.
But it is in no way considered analogous to sexual orientation to something like homosexuality.
It's a disordered. I think it is analogous to how homosexuality was previously categorized, if I'm not mistaken.
But I'm talking about now.
Correct. Yeah.
It would be considered as Vosh has said,
Yeah.
it would even academically it would be considered distinct.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, gotcha.
Like I'm pretty sure that I'm like 95% sure that even the DSM says like this is a sexuality, but like no. It's a sexuality that made it in the book. So
by the loosest chemical impulses definition of the term, and don't make us defend it very far. Thank you. That's what the footnote says.
yeah, I think that it's weird. It's almost like if you call it an orientation, that like it's a defense of it, because like.
Well, I do think it lends it some legitimacy just based on the understanding of the terminology.
It lends a legitimacy to the idea that the person can't help it, which It's true. They
I
can't
don't.
help
I
it.
think as long as it's in the DSM, it's implied they can't help it. Like it's not like I chose to be autistic or depressed or anything like
Right,
that.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think that's sort of inferred. I just think that it's distinctified in order to like, I guess in a way, elevate the alarm surrounding it. But so how interpret that depending on your position, however you will.
I also think it's heavily implied that you don't pick it because why would anybody ever choose that? It doesn't
Well, I
benefit
don't think
you.
you choose your sexual
Yeah,
orientations.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ever any utility in thinking of it as functioning like a sexual orientation. I'm not talking about, when I ask this question, I'm saying, let me rephrase it. To what extent and why do you think it is a good idea to label it as a sexual orientation in various situations? For example, if you're trying to empathize with a pedophile, or if you're trying to understand
Oh,
that this,
Mr.
I
Girl
think your
argued with that
laundry's
expert
done.
about it hardcore. Did you call me? Nope, nobody called me.
this conversion therapy might not work for this person, or that this person,
Oh, just to be clear, he argued against the expert saying that he doesn't think that it's an orientation, that it's just a disorder, and
Oh,
the
Mr. Girl doesn't think it's an orientation, or the expert does?
he might have changed his stance now, but when he talked to Dr. James Cantor, he was fighting with him a lot about it, and then the guy was like, "Look, I've done the research." Like he's like, "This is my field." He's like, "You don't tell me." Basically, was the message that the dude put out there to him.
So can I just, as an aside, is that necessarily unfair if the dude is actually a psychological researcher and Mr. Girl's a YouTuber? I mean, I don't know if he has
No,
any
I took Dr. James
credentials.
Cantor's side.
Okay, all right, I got you.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, you gotta listen to
Because
seemingly
dude.
treated
I
as
was gonna say, I'll be
mentally
real. At
ill,
that point, I would get annoyed. I'd be like, okay, buddy, what do? Make videos? Shut up. Like,
But but it's funny because it's one of the most it is like the most normal like expected take that you would expect from like any person that you ask. Like this is what I expect people to say that Mr. Girl has on the subject probably.
Hmm.
Other than like the one that like nobody really would ever defend, just like CP bad, don't hurt kids. Like these ones are all like extraordinarily common. Basically, you would almost have to be a contrarian or like legitimately evil to say otherwise.
or receive treatment for whatever, blah blah. But also, it should be seen as this kind of like immutable part of themselves that they and maybe others are just going to have to live with.
No, because I think even if empathy was your goal, and one which could be, I think, in some circumstances quite suspect, depending on the relevant intentions, you can still be empathetic towards a person with a mental illness. You'd still define it as something socially non-normative, something destructive and harmful. By referring to it as a paraphilia as opposed to a sexuality, you normalize its unhealthy relationship with social function, which I think is good, because of course, if you called
But
it
you think it's
a
100%
sexuality,
good.
as to not refer to it as a sexuality, yes, I think it's bad to refer to it as a sexuality.
But I'm saying you think it's purely bad. Like there's no ever reason to ever think about it like that at all, no matter what.
Suppose if aliens had a gun to your head and told you they'd shoot you if you didn't change your definitions? I mean, you could always find some edge case. As a social rule, though,
Well, I'm
overwhelmingly...
asking you to search your heart and see if there is an edge case in there, and if you don't
all
find
right.
one,
So
then
now we're
sure.
gonna
But that's what I'm asking.
and I do have to get out of here at 6, so I'm gonna try and make all of the rest of this as succinct as I can. But now we're starting to get into the sussy wussy territory from the
Sure.
perspective of a first introduction. The idea that he is being so insistent on Vosh altering or reconsidering the way that he already thinks about these things and the way that he's phrasing these things comes off as suspect.
I see. However, this is actually how Mr. Girl behaves whenever somebody doesn't fully answer a question.
No. I understand this. I'm just this was from an analysis perspective. This is
Yeah.
when I started to like, as opposed to just sort of rolling my eyes through most of his through most of the earlier portion, and I think I explained my reasons for that. This was the part where I started to lean forward in the proverbial chair, so to speak.
All right. Well, I would say
do
this
it.
also completely follows his behavior from the entire rest of the conversation. So while I think the emotional part of you having this same kind of structure as how he's been talking the whole time is going to be like flared up and it's going to make him seem sussy. I think that if you just look at it from like a like more like zoomed out uh view of the whole conversation, this is really the same way he's been talking the whole time. They're just talking about a subject that's very touchy.
Well, I understand that, but like, I mean, I'll be frank. I thought he was stupid, and now I think he's stupid and sussy. I'm not gonna like. That was at the time, okay?
Sure.
The time. It wasn't like I switched the perception. It was like, oh, okay. Not only is he like not thinking through his ethical positions, there is something else going on. Like that. That was my perspective.
Sure. One of my favorite quotes about Mr. Girl or from Mr. Girl is hating me is the first step is one of the first steps towards loving me.
Even if he was actually a pedophile, I still would not hate him as a human being. I will
Sure.
just say that with that completely.
It's
out of the
actually
way.
close to another one of his quotes too when he's arguing with people and they'll be like, "Are you a pedophile?" He'll be like, "Why does it matter? Like, why does what I'm saying hinge upon that fact or not?"
Because I think that there are quote unquote advocates for certain positions that are actually the what should be the subject of those positions and will use the conversation as an excuse to discuss those positions in a somewhat societally acceptable way.
Yeah.
So, and
So if
I
somebody
would
said
say
that, he'd concede, I think. But that's
okay,
not what
'cause,
they
like,
ever say. They're usually using it as like a rhetorical tool to like try to make him look bad or to like try to like take control of the conversation, so to speak.
no, my thing is like if like I've always said, the way that you approach these conversations is has to be very delicate because you can so easily come across as one of these guys who is fetishizing the conversation just by the virtue of having. I mean, I'm serious. I'm not trying to.
Just yeah.
I'm
This
not trying
space
to
has
be
seen Amos Yee
obtuse.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
Asking you
All right.
about the edge cases, and
wasn't
something more
Amos Yee
realistic than the
actually like a
alien scenario.
pedo?
Yeah, and he talked to Destiny
Okay.
like a bunch of times.
Yeah. But like I thought that one was like pretty much substantiated. Like
Yeah, he's
that's
convicted.
like I was gonna say yeah. Okay, I was just making sure.
I can't think of one. The alien
Ah.
scenario was my honest to God best effort. I don't think that there's any reason to. Even if your goal was empathy or, corrective treatment or anything like that, I still think that you would have to refer to it as paraphilia. I think there'd be more utility in that. I don't know what utility there'd be in the opposite, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were a therapist, right? I mean, if, for example, if you go into therapy and you say, I think I might have this, that, or the other, it's quite bad. They'll refer to it as a paraphilia, but I don't think that's antithetical to their goal of treating or mitigating, your non-normative
And there's
or
a decent
harmful
percentage of
sexual desires. I
therapists who
think
will
those are in line.
ostracize you for whether they openly do it or whether they keep it internally and try to suppress it. There's definitely
Is
like
it ever
I can't deny the
good?
perception.
Yeah, it's probably
No.
not the best job for you. If that's
What for me? Absolutely not. No,
no,
I
I'm
find
saying if you're that kind of therapist.
oh no, if you go into like any sort of psychological counseling with preconceptions about individuals and their personalities, you're in the wrong profession. Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's how you get pedophiles
It would
ending
be
up
it would be
offending.
like it would be like being a doctor, but like anytime you come across someone who has like I don't know cancer, you have like a moral apprehension to cancer. So you're just like, yeah, I'm not treating you. You're a freak. Get out.
Sorry, God put that cancer in your body. It's not my
Yep.
job to take it
Sorry.
out.
Well, okay. Now hold on a second, because now we're getting to somewhere I can make arguments now. No, I think
Oops.
like yeah,
Should-
100%.
Yeah.
If you're a pedophile, to stop thinking of yourself as sick. To if you can't fix it.
You can't fix it. I don't know.
Like you're supposed to just accept that it's a paraphilia. I guess there's something wrong with you. That there always will be.
Yeah, well, I think sickness is kind of vague there. You have to accept that it's always going to be a harmful part of you. If it's something that you can't fix, I mean, what is or isn't a sickness? That encompasses a lot of stuff. Having the sniffles is a sickness. In this case, it would be, having a predatory desire or having a, a predilection towards predation or something like that. That goes beyond sickness. I mean,
That's
sickness
actually
isn't
not what it
necessarily
is.
socially wrong. This would be a, some people have a compulsive violent thoughts,
I
for
would
example.
agree.
I know that's a thing. Like some
I
schizophrenics
think
might
there's
have
a
that, for
meaningful
example.
difference
If they want to
between
go with sickness,
pedophilia and pedophilic thoughts and pederasty and child rape. Those are two very distinct things that do need to be like
Yeah, saying somebody
differentiated
has a
between.
predilection towards predatory behavior is really, really harmful rhetoric towards people that
I can
haven't done anything wrong.
I can steel man version of that and say that the end result of certain predilections left unchecked can lead to predatory behavior.
Sure,
But
which
I
is
don't
why
know
we
that
don't
that's
use that
unique.
language, because we don't want to
Right,
encourage it to go unchecked by making
right.
people.
And I would also say that's not unique to this, paraphilia.
Right. Yeah. Which is all the more reason why we should avoid needlessly stigmatizing. We want just the right amount of stigma.
I just want you to understand that when I evaluated all of this, I wasn't coming at it from a place of like intrinsic pedophile hatred or like I mean outside of the ones who have acted upon those predilections,
But you're
it's
not
nothing
hating the
like that.
pedophilia about them. You're hating the actions that
Actually,
they've taken.
I'm hating that they have to go through that and that's what's in their head because I feel like if I myself had to go through that in the society that we live in, where obviously we have to restrict against the inaction of those kinds of things, I think it would be torturous. But I
Yeah.
don't think that but I don't think that that means that we should be more permissive towards any behavior, nor do I think that that means that we should immediately condemn people just for having the thoughts because that's thought crime.
Yeah. So I get like the idea is that the reason why it's so scary to us is because uh we understand how difficult it would be for us to suppress our own sexual desires. Be like, well, I couldn't just not have sex with women or men, whatever you're into. So I don't think that you can suppress it either.
Well,
And
it's not really
remarkably,
a
the
matter
majority of them do.
is it a matter of ability? Because if I had to, if you told me right now that I could never have sex with another woman or my partner or whatever ever again, I would probably be able to do, or the societal consequences would be
Yeah,
dire.
yeah.
I would be able to do it, but it would be torturous
Shit, dude. I think that
because
I would convince
part of the
myself that I could, but fail.
part of the biology of human beings leads us towards certain reproductive actions, and like I think it would suck to have to like suppress something like that. I mean, ask anybody who's had to be closeted from being gay. It
Yeah,
fucking sucks. But there is a meaningful difference there, right? Because the acting upon one set of like internal thoughts leads to one set of outcomes, whereas another leads to another, right? I think that there is still a distinction to be made in that regard, but the amount of like, torture that mental anguish that someone who has to, who has to suppress that stuff for the sake of society, I mean, I'm not saying that it's like pleasant or that we should wish,
sure.
you
I'm
know what I
saying
mean?
that I don't know if
Yeah,
I actually could do it. Because I think
too
that I
much
would
of a
convince
fuck
myself that I
machine,
could. But I mean,
too much of
I'm married and I'm polyamorous. I mean, it's definitely a part of my life. Um, I think I'd go crazy. If I was successful, I'd be a crazy person who was miserable and unpleasant to be around. Yeah, I'd
this is
lose
the
it.
word they'd use there, then fine. I mean, the important part is that they know those thoughts are never acceptable, something they should act on.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I agree with you. What other contentious questions are raised about this? Simulate. Wait, I'm gonna change my headphones because my headphones are dying.
Been known to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Can I still hear you?
I can hear you.
Oh, maybe not.
Oh.
Oh, I have to change them in Discord. Hang on.
Ah.
I forgot. Okay. Nice. Okay. Next question. Simulated child porn lolly stuff.
I think it's pretty sussy.
What does that mean?
I think that if you have an interest in that sort of stuff, you should definitely be checking yourself as to why. You know, like the thing that really bothers me about this shit, apart from the fact that anytime you want to look at like hentai on a hentai site, you have to like negate the tag lolly and thus 50% of the site's content. The thing that bothers me is people who pretend there's no relationship whatsoever between like drawn lolly shit and actual attraction to children. Because of course there's a relationship between those things. Ridiculous to pretend otherwise. So they need to be aware of that, if anything.
Are you saying that based on common sense, or is there any evidence of that?
Any evidence of that? You mean, okay, so I've had a bunch of links thrown at me by people who are, again, very sussy, trying to argue there's not actually a relationship between instances of child predation and access to like lolicon or whatever.
Well, I would assume there is a correlation between people who really want to believe that and people who are pedophiles. So
yeah, I'd be willing to bet that.
For sure that I won't agree with you there, but just you where you're at now. I'm saying, are you arriving at that because of like some study I don't know about, or you just think it's obvious?
It's not a study that I'm not speaking on this through a study you're not aware of. I think it's categorical. I think that the fetishization of youth, to the extent that you're fetishizing the bodies or mentalities of underage people, is categorically harmful. Because even if somehow, and I don't know if there's any research indicating this, even if somehow you could find that there was zero correlation between any criminal behavior there at all, and you know, the widespread consumption of hentai, lolicon, whatever, you know, I still think that it normalizes quite negative things, you know. Or to put it another way, like if I was a kid again, you know, and I'm not, and I like found my dad like looking at like fucking big honkin' Hooters porn one day
really
or
threw
some
me
shit
off,
like
you know?
that, like that'd be awkward as
I'm
hell,
not a
but,
kid
you know,
either,
life
for the
goes
record.
on. The sun rises in the morning. But if I like walked
Hey, that's fucked up. You should have told me ahead of time. I didn't agree to have this conversation with a non-kid. No, I'm just kidding.
of my parents,
Hey man, you got a
like,
beard
or
too.
whatever else,
You're not a kid.
consuming, like lolly or Shotokan or some shit like that,
You don't know
I think
that.
that would irreparably damage
my
my trust in
VTuber
them. That there'd be some fundamental,
avatar.
like forevermore, some disconnect between them
Fair
and my
enough.
ability to trust them. And I think there's
I don't
This
reasons
is
for
mine.
that. It's not
I don't
just
think
like
we
Way
should-
more
I
attractive
don't
than
think we
I
should
am
get
in
too
real life.
personal here.
well, I'm just trying to explain that it's so I don't, without working on data here, I feel like it's just bad to fetishize that kind of stuff. We fetishize the fuck, for instance, out of female youth. You know, we do it to men too, to an extent, but mostly to women. And this like evolves in so many creepy ways that things don't even get talked about, like child beauty pageants, or this the obsession with like
That's
barely
essentially
legal
porn. Yeah, barely.
yeah,
legal.
so it's holistic. It's not just lolly or shota, though I think that's, you know, a particularly egregious outcropping of it. I think it's just this whole like long-standing global infatuation with young women. I guess youth in general, but the lolly stuff's more of a problem than the shota stuff, and I think that should stop. It's probably pretty bad, you know.
Stop. And you think it should stop by what mechanism?
Culturally, I think it has to be opposed. So, like,
Okay,
you
so
could,
it should be legal, but we should be like, hey,
you could raise.
hey, Dad, don't do that.
Well, I'd hope I say that. You can raise the age of consent to 25, but then there would be like barely legal 25-year-old girl porn. Like that's going to remain no matter what like you legislate around it. And you can do whatever you want with lolly or shota, but then people are going to draw 1,000-year-old girls who just happen to have the bodies of 10-year-olds. You can always work your way around that crap.
Here's a thought experiment. I'm gonna open a string of strip clubs in Las Vegas.
I
It's gonna be called
object
Mr.
to
Girls.
every single element of the following device that he uses in regards to effective advocacy or any sort of that thing. This
I
is
love
where
I love everything that's about to be said. I was in tears.
Completely. I mean, I understand, but I was not laughing when I first heard this, and I think
I
that
understand.
everything he does here is incredibly damaging to the cause that he is trying to advocate for.
Well, I guess the counter evidence that I have to that is he was able to very successfully build a community off of this being like one of the first videos that he did.
I can't blame people for having wrong interpretation.
There was a video that Sfaxon wanted me to show you last night, and back when he was in college, he said that he wanted to approach conversations that people have a hard time talking about with humor as a way of sort of like breaking the mold.
Well, I'm just going to tell you that maybe this is a case of different senses of humor then, because there was nothing funny about this to me.
I understand.
Whatever
You'll have
you
to
want,
forgive my
Emporium.
laughing.
Okay.
Because
No,
I'm
you're
not. It's
fine.
gonna make me
And
laugh.
In
No,
one
you're
strip club, the
fine.
strippers are
I'm not gonna hold it
25,
against
24,
you.
23,
But don't
22,
hold it against me if I
all the way
don't.
down to infants. But each strip club, and this is a sovereign state, so there's no laws. In each club, everyone is the same age. Okay, so if you want to watch babies crawl around, or you want to watch 100-year-olds, we'll start at 100. So basically, everybody and everybody all the women on the planet have to work here. My question is, in America now, which club do you think would be the most popular? If this,
I actually think this device is really effective because it lets Vosh make the statement of what he thinks is happening, without him having to like say.
What is trying to be done here?
What he's trying to ask Vosh is he's trying to create a situation where he doesn't have to feel like he's saying, I think that this is what I would be into in a much safer way than just like outright saying like, what do you think that most men are attracted to, what age? So he's creating a hypothetical that creates like a safer landing pad for him to say like, what do you think that the average person in America is? Because it's the kind of question
You see
that
a
most
safer
people
landing pad, I see a nuclear fucking minefield. Like, no,
Yep,
there is no optically good way for Bosch, like
Correct.
Irish laddie, to answer this question.
there's no good way to ask the actual question that the hypothetical alludes to either. So I'm saying that the hypothetical
Then
offers a
what?
softer
So
padding.
what then is the hypothetical alluding to, and of what relevance is? Because from my perspective, the only thing that he could possibly be alluding to here is look how many people in America have pedophilic or near pedophilic predilections. Doesn't that make you more sympathetic to them? To which my response would be no. It just means there's more people that I think are sussy.
No, sympathy is not the goal. Empathy is the goal.
Or empathetic, excuse me. But as we've already established, empathy does not necessarily have to require sympathy. How about that?
Correct. I differentiated. That was the distinction I was making here.
And of what relevance is the number of people who have these predilections or similar
because
to
people
whether
act
or not you can be
because
empathetic
people
with
act
them?
like these numbers are super small, and that this is like a super rare freak thing. That like people act like the average normal person can look at somebody who is 17 years old, 23 hours and 59 minutes, and be like, oh, she's in a swimsuit. I can't even look over there. And then as soon as the clock strikes legal, they're like, hey, she's hot now. What the fuck?
Yeah, I
That's
think
weird
I
how
think,
that happened.
I think that behavior should be also socially discouraged.
But I think that that's how people act like that's how it works. People act like that's how people's minds actually work.
I with rare exception of like Quagmire from Family Guy, have you ever seen someone do that in real life?
No, but people act like it, and it's stupid.
How do people act like it then? I don't understand.
Because people will condemn people for like if somebody makes a statement about somebody, so like if somebody says, hey, this chick's hot, and they're like, dude, the chick's like 17, they'll be like, what? I didn't know that. And then they're like, well, a pedo, and then they fucking dunk on him shit. Like, how are they supposed to know?
I'll give you an example of a time that this happened to myself. When I worked at my old job, we were closing the kitchen down, and we were talking about Billie Eilish and singing along to her music, and one of the guys that I was working with said, damn, I want to have babies with her. And I said, you know, she's only like 16, right? And he made a face, and we all laughed and moved on. There was no ridicule, there was no pointing, there was nothing of the sort.
Sure, I'm talking about when people have discourse about this subject, they act like that.
I don't think that many people do have discourse about this subject.
There are people that act like people are pedophiles who date 25-year-olds.
Okay.
Okay, so like
That's
I feel
retarded.
like Sure.
And I don't think that's
and you know
the
what
same
happens
thing.
too, right? This same brain rot trickles down to like the kind of thing that I'm saying.
No, it's just the difference is where we draw the line.
Sure.
Like,
but
I mean, I think that it's stupid to accuse like Leo of being a. I think it's weird that he does that. That only dates like what 20-year-olds or whatever. But
I
to
don't think
call
it's
him a
weird.
to call him it's unusual, but like not in a way where I would condemn it or have any sort of moral injunction against it. It's just like you don't think it's odd that he seems to follow a pattern
No.
of once his girlfriend turns a certain age, he dumps them and gets a new
No.
one?
So
Yeah, no,
I was in Wix Discord and people were saying this like my entire life. As soon as I could understand, like I don't know, as far back as I can remember, I have always understood that wealthy older men will always like. Well, let me put it not always like seem to have a preference for dating younger women. It is so common that I
but that's
expect
not
it.
what we're talking
Well, we're talking
about.
about whether it's weird or not, and I'm saying it's
No,
not
no, no, no,
weird
no, 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 no. I
or
am
odd.
asking. I'm not asking whether it's odd for wealthy older men to date younger women. I'm asking whether or not you think it's odd, specifically, that Leonardo DiCaprio seems to only date women within a very specific age range, terminates the relationship once they reach the end of that age range, and then picks up another woman at the beginning of it. I just think
No.
that the mathematical precision of it is unusual.
Oh,
Not in a way where I
if
would morally condemn it, but just, it's interesting, I guess.
sure, I would say that if we get down to the specific, sure, that part of it is weird, but the fact that
That
he is
was
an
all I was
older,
commenting on.
okay,
That was
the
all I
fact
was
that
commenting on, was the
okay,
specific.
yeah, like if it's that mathematical, then that's a bit more weird.
I think people who say that it's weird for him because he's an older man and she's a younger woman, I think that's retarded.
And that
And
he
it's
gets
not
rid of them
pedophilia.
when they get to a
Well,
certain age.
that is demonstrable based
Yeah.
on the dates of the end of the relationship. I don't think that it's odd that he does that because of their age. I think it's odd that he follows a pattern.
Oh,
That's what
sure.
I find like odd. Just the specific details of
He
that
has a type,
relationship. But
and the type is an age.
look, that we can't deny.
Yeah. No, I had people arguing with me the other day that it is weird. They're like, and then I'm like, it's not weird. It's super normal that like older men who have the means to date younger women are going to do so. And then somebody's like, you don't think
No,
it's creepy? I was like, nobody said anything about creepy till just
there
now.
are
What the
so
fuck? It's normal though. It's normal.
so my partner and I just recently started rewatching Friends, and I don't know how familiar you are with it.
Is this
But
when
there's a
Ross
point.
was dating the chick and they were making fun of him?
Nope. This is
Oh,
when Monica was dating Tom Selleck.
I don't remember that.
So
Well,
Tom Selleck's
maybe I
character
do.
is like 50, and
Okay, I
she's
do.
like
I
in her
do.
late 20s. Yeah. And he's a doctor that knew her when she was growing up. And my partner and I actually had a lot of discussions about this because at first, my partner felt odd about it, and I sort of pushed on her a little bit. I was like, why is that weird? And the only thing that we came down to that made it uncomfortable was the fact that he had known her as a child.
Well,
Outside of that, the mere fact that an older man was dating a younger woman should not I like that wasn't a problem whatsoever. The only thing that made it unusual was whenever they would make jokes about like him remembering her from when she was 11. I don't know. To me personally, that's a bit odd. But the mere fact that an older man can like date a younger woman, I don't know if that upsets you, that's a level of insecurity on your part that I can't help you with.
the
You know what
thing
I
that
mean?
bothers me about it is that he
There's
was
some
her
soy
doctor.
lefties out there. Yeah.
So
Like
the idea that he may
there's
have like seen
factors.
her without her clothes on being a doctor.
Well, no,
and then
eye
it's a
doctor.
no.
He's an eye
Oh,
doctor.
okay, then fuck that. Fuck all of it. I don't care.
Whoa. But he was a friend of her father's, and he had known her father all throughout, like friends all through growing up. The unusual part was that her as a child was a big part of both, both of their lives,
Oh,
and then her as an adult. Now they're dating.
wait.
That's the weird part.
If they had they maintained a sort of normative relationship the entire time, or was it just like
No, but
briefly during the
to me,
during a section
no,
of
it
the
wasn't
childhood, and
brief.
then
No,
again?
it wasn't briefly. This was the father's best friend, so I have to imagine that he would be around for a large portion of the childhood. At least when I think about like I mean, my dad didn't really have many friends, but my mom definitely did have a best friend from college, and she was around so often we referred to her as our third aunt or our fourth aunt.
Yeah. I'm familiar with the somebody who's not technically related, but that's your aunt or uncle.
Now, if I were to go on and marry that person, I think I would rightfully get some odd looks from my family.
Yeah,
But
so no matter what, it's weird.
If I had never known that, well, hold on. If I had never known that person up and until we started dating, then there's no issue.
Well, I don't even think it's an issue. I think it's weird, but it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not fine in a sense where I would like. It's just kind of like a.
I don't care if both of them get a sexual gratification from having known each other back then and now. I don't care. They're both adults. It's fine. If he didn't fucking groom her, I don't give a shit. I am not.
No,
I am
yeah,
fully
I
supportive
don't
of
think
people embracing all their weird sexual feelings as long as it's not hurting anybody or they're doing anything illegal. Go for it. I don't give a shit.
I think it's.
But if he groomed her, that's bad.
Phrase. I don't think he did. I don't think the implication was even there for that either. But I
would have been pretty hot for friends. Like as in hot, as in taboo, not as in sexy.
No. Yeah. Pretty.
That was for anybody who's watching.
That was for all the Mr. Girl fans.
Nice.
I think that it's the epitome of the phrase. Well, if they're happy.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Yep. Yeah.
We're to open.
That's fair. Yeah.
Tomorrow.
In a sovereign state adjacent to America.
Yeah, and it's like there's identities are. There's no issues of social ostracization. Nobody knows. Everybody's wearing whatever disguises.
The closest
Not
argument you
strippers.
could make there, I think, is from European literature from ye olden days, and it seems like predation against girls spiked up around like 14 to 16. So if you could, if all the degenerate sex tourists,
yeah, looking around you at America now. I want you to base this just on your sense. You know a lot of people. You talk to a lot of people about this. And we all.
I haven't talked to a lot of people about this specifically. I'm going to.
Okay, well, we run in different circles, but based on your observations of American humans, which club is the most popular?
Also, for anybody in the chat who isn't like a VGGer or anything like that, who isn't super familiar with Bosch's community or Bosch specifically, what the trepidation that you sense in his voice isn't like a discomfort in the subject matter. It's a sort of cautious, at least as far as I can interpret it from everything that I've ever seen of the guy. He's been clipped so many times, even unintentionally, that talking about topics like this can be minefields.
Sure.
No matter what he says. Getting Bosch to say a sentence in regards to the subject of pedophilia can sometimes just be enough.
Sure. He did agree to talk about it, though, so you'd expect him to engage.
He did, but I also don't think he expected Mr. Girl to engage with it in regard. He
agreed to talk about pedophilia. He just didn't agree to talk to the master of talking about pedophilia. He didn't know what he was getting in. He didn't know what he was getting himself into when he agreed to talk to Mr. Girl about it.
I'll agree with you there. How about that?
Yeah.
Culturally, I don't think that we've done anything to appropriately discourage that kind of predatory behavior towards girls. So my guess is that it would be somewhere between 14 to 17. I think that culturally we've done one-way mirror.
The girls don't know. The girls don't know that you're. Is it even predatory to go look at them? They don't know that you're looking at them.
I would say that it's predatory.
How?
It's a website.
If they don't know,
because you
didn't. They're not.
They're not being given the choice of whether or not they wish to be observed. You're violating their bodily autonomy. I thought that was something you were big on.
No, bodily autonomy has nothing to do with somebody looking at you.
I
You're
think
not.
It factors in. When we're talking about observation for sexual gratification, which is what's being discussed here, I definitely think it factors in.
Oh no, I don't. I had a debate with Smugbug about whether it's immoral to fantasize about like a coworker or something, and I just say like
that's not what we're talking about.
So what? Well,
we're not talking about fantasizing. We're talking about the actual literal observation of someone. Like that's different.
Sure, but it is analogous. You're still objectifying.
That is the only way in which it's analogous, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that you had brought up. You said that when it comes to sexual objectification, the bodily autonomy does come into play. So if it hinges on sexual objectification, then if I'm doing it in my head or if I'm doing it with my eyes, as long as I'm not like, well, no, if they don't know, like you're not doing anything to them.
The person isn't an active, whether or not they're
the thing you
aware
don't like is still happening in my head.
Okay, but whether or not they're aware of it, the person is an active physical participant in the action in the second one, whereas in the first one, you're just imagining them.
Well, all the objectification is still happening in my imagination.
I'm not condemning the objectification. I'm condemning the
no. When I'm looking,
observing a person without their consent and knowledge while objectifying.
I don't know,
like for the purposes of sexual gratification. The way that he's laid it out, I think, is fully
let me see. Let me see how he lays this out.
Girls don't know.
Because I wouldn't say.
He lays it out pretty quick, so
yeah.
like I don't. Yeah.
I don't think he's suggesting like for instance, it's not as though he's suggesting that we're putting cameras in their bathroom and they don't know. This would be bad.
That is the implication.
Yeah.
That is a possible implication based on the way that he phrased it, and that's definitely how I took it, and that's what I'm objecting to.
Okay,
so
yeah, not like that.
Listen to how he phrases it.
Sure. Which I think is why he ends up reframing the whole thing to make it a little bit easier to explain the thought experiment. But we'll see.
Even predatory to go look at them? They don't know that you're looking at them.
I would say that it's predatory.
It's a website where you can log in and look at locker rooms. Just forget the slavery aspect.
I would continue to believe that's predatory. For
for sure. But much harder type of predatory behavior to discourage if no one will ever know that camera was there.
If you put a camera in an underage girl's locker room and the police found it, I assure you that they would be able to very quickly, succinctly, and with great confidence explain to you what you did wrong.
All right, then I have to go take care of something. No, I'm just kidding. All right, what if? Okay,
I did think that was
adding all this shit in.
Thank you. I believe in your integrity way more now.
I'm not. If you're trying to catch me in a hot
that one. Okay, in my defense, that one, the delivery there was pretty obviously comedic.
Yeah.
The timing, the cadence, everything about that was a joke. Obviously.
Yeah.
I think that's one where you would have to maliciously read it incorrect, like without charity whatsoever, in order to interpret it as not a joke. But there are other things that he say that I know that you laugh at or call jokes that just to me, like an open reading from my perspective, I don't necessarily agree.
Sometimes I laugh because he's not joking, and I just think it's just really funny to hear somebody phrase something like that. I understand where he's going. It's just funny to hear somebody phrase it like that.
Sure.
I'm gonna try to catch. Do you think I'm trying to trap you after what I said to you? After I told you I was a Care Bear, and you think I'm trying to? You think this is a sting? Listen, androids, fucking perfect replicas. The strip thing again. No one is getting hurt. They just look exactly like humans. My question is, which club is the most popular? My question is, where do you think we're at? And I'm asking it in kind of a exciting way because we're in public. But where do you think we're at? What is?
I genuinely don't think that much has been done to culturally disbar the average modern guy from the attitudes that we had back in antiquity.
Okay.
And see, now he's getting frustrated because Vosh is still not. He's softening it, and he's still not answering it.
Vosh has answered the question.
No, he hasn't answered what he thinks that it would be based on his own observation, like on his own sense.
Yes, he has. He's appealing to literature as the most objective form of observation you can get.
No. Sorry, that's why I changed it. He said your own personal sense of modern day today, and appealing to literature doesn't do that.
Actually, so then in that sense, Vosh said, I don't think we've done much societally to discourage any of the old behaviors, meaning I don't think it's changed much. The reason Vosh is phrasing it this way is because he's trying to avoid being clipped.
Sure. And if he would have just said, I don't want to answer that, that would have been fine. I know this like super
That's
well
just
because
not
of
the
how
kind
Mr.
of person that he is. He's,
Sure,
like,
but
he'll
so for
engage
Mr.
with the
Girl
conversation.
and myself, if I'm asking somebody something and they're dancing around it instead of saying like I don't want to answer that, I'm gonna keep on trying to find a way to ask you because I don't understand. It to me, it just seems like you are frustratingly just trying not to answer me instead of just saying like I don't want to answer it, or I understand that you're doing that and I'm mad that you won't just say it to me. You won't give me the respect saying I don't want to
I
answer.
suppose that that's fair, but I think that given the, I think that Vosh has given his answer as far as he's going to give it, and I do think, I know it's sort of unfair to say this, but I think given his context specifically, as in his history as a content creator, I don't think that he's unfair.
I'm not trying to
being,
demonize Vosh here. I'm just trying
no,
to
no,
show.
no, no, I'm not. I'm
To
just
the
saying, like,
contrary, I'm just saying I don't think Mr. Grill did anything wrong. I don't think that Vosh necessarily did anything wrong either.
No, I didn't say that Mr. Girl did anything wrong. What I said was the reason Vosh is being so seemingly evasive is not because he's being evasive, it's because he's trying to phrase his answers in a way that both the answer, but also don't allow for him to be easily clipped.
Right. Well, I think that is a little bit evasive, but I think it's a smart way to be. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that because I mean, if you're what he's evading those clips, so he's evading saying things in a purely normal and honest way, the way that he would think it, so
Well,
that
then
way
in that
people don't
in
try to
that
hold
regard,
you to a.
in that regard, he's being more intelligent about how he handles his rhetoric than Mr. Girl, because he is not allowing rhetorical slip-ups to affect and to negatively affect his advocacy or his platform.
Sure, and I know that Mr. Girl also gets frustrated when people care more about optics than honesty. So that's what's happening here. This is just like
Well,
context.
Bosch is a political advocate, so like he's going to care
I-
about optics.
Yeah, I
Maybe
know.
not
One of the
first and
biggest
foremost, but
criticisms of
yeah.
Mr. Girl is that he doesn't care about optics, and people want him to, and he's just like, no.
Towards
So
women
what-
and attractiveness towards women.
And what number?
I think it would be
Do you
somewhere
not
from
wanna answer this
14.
question?
No, I think it'd be somewhere from 14 to 17. I don't
There
think
you go,
women
there's
would
the
change
answer.
Those
that.
are big. That's a big
I
difference.
have no idea, and
That
I
is a
couldn't
big
even
difference.
begin to think by which categories I would separate them.
You know, I had a.
Wait, you couldn't begin to like delineate between them? Like 14 could be just starting puberty.
Again, this just sounds like a fucking trap. If this conversation was had offline, I don't think he would be answering this.
Sure,
way. But the fact that it's happening on stream, it sounds like he's trying. Like, if this were off stream, I have no doubt that Vosh would just look him dead in the eye and go, "Are you trying to like what are you trying to ask me here?" Or he would just answer him. The fact that it's happening on stream, which you can call like a detriment to content creation in regards of like effective conversation, but like
yeah, that's
I think that's the
case.
reason I think that's the reason he's answering this way, and I don't necessarily impugn him for it either.
I don't impugn him. I think that everybody knows that. I think that Mr. Girl also knows that. It's just frustrating for him because he wants.
Well,
to have this conversation.
I can understand it would be frustrating, but then if he wants to have the conversation in a public space, he needs to acknowledge that there are certain expectations that go along with that. And one of those is that if someone doesn't want to phrase something in a way that's uncomfortable, but you want them to phrase it that way, you need to cede to the way that they want to phrase it for the sake of the public optics of the conversation.
Well,
if you want to have a private conversation, have a private conversation. But if you're going to have it on a stream, don't expect him to exactly phrase it the way you want to or give you the specific answers the way that you want them.
Well, look, that's how boundaries work. Mr. Girl's free to ask it as many ways as he wants. If Vosh doesn't want to answer it, he can say that.
And why is Mr. Girl being so insistent that he answer?
Because
why is he
he's-
asking
because
the same
he's-
question over? If
because-
boundaries truly matter, why is he violating Vosh's?
He's not. Vosh has not said, I don't want to answer that.
I think that the way that Vosh is speaking and his body language and his facial expressions clearly indicate his discomfort around the topic, and knowing anything about Vosh would also
Boundaries are
lend you towards
negotiable.
that.
Boundaries are
No, they're
negotiable.
not.
Yes, they
No,
are.
they're not.
Definitionally,
No, they're not.
they are.
Boundaries are something that
You
you
have to hold
establish for
them.
yourself.
Yeah, and you have to hold them. If people want to try to negotiate that, you can negotiate them, and by continuing to engage, he is negotiating.
Yes, but
his
you
boundaries.
are the final arbiter there. So
Correct.
that's not
I
a
agree.
negotiation.
Which means I agree. I agree. Which means that if Vosh, as long as Vosh is still talking to him, Mr. Girl's not violating a boundary. if he's running into one, and
Vosh
Vosh is
has
continuing.
answered the question, and Mr. Girl is insisting on continuing. Of what reason? Like, why is he continuing to answer?
Mr. Girl's asking for a specific age, and he didn't get a specific
Why
age.
does he need the specific age? I guess that's my question.
I don't know. Usually when I ask a question, I want to get the answer that I'm looking for, and not an answer that is different. Yeah, like when I say an answer that I'm looking for, an answer that fits the criteria of the question.
But now we're talking about Mr. Girl and not you. Why do you think he is asking for a specific age? Knowing him like you do.
I would say that that's the question that he asked, and
the question he asked is, what club do you think would be most popular? He didn't say you can only pick one, and he certainly didn't say
he said which club. That's which specific club. Like that's what he's asking.
What if the most accurate answer is between 14 and 17?
That's not possible.
Why is that not possible?
Because that isn't a club. That is several clubs.
Yes, but if there is 25% split equally between all of them, then
then that would be. Then I would say no. Then that would be fine. But that would be really good to clarify, since the question was about one specific one, and it sounds like Vosh is presenting. I would say it's somewhere in this range. But he's saying, well, can't you specific that down? He also said a really weird Sure, but he also said the really weird thing is I wouldn't even know how to go about like differentiating. Like I'd say like these are pretty different. Like 14 you could just be starting puberty, 17 you could basically look the same as you're going to when you're 28.
You're differentiating that now. Does Mr. Girl?
Oh, 100% he knows, because this is what he said. He goes,
no, right now.
He already did. He said those are pretty different. Like here, I'll just go back a little bit.
No. What I'm asking is, you just specifically said, okay, 14 is XYZ, 17 XYZ. Between those two, Mr. Girl did not do that.
No, sure, but you asked me, why is this specific thing not important? I'm saying because they're different.
Well,
Vosh didn't ask him this in this way.
So if Vosh says 15, then what? Like, I guess that's my question. Yeah, see, that's my fucking problem here.
Well, I mean, I can't know. That's not what happened.
Well, yeah, but like, I don't see the relevance of the argumentation.
Well,
what is he trying to
continue? The conversation can continue past that point. If he gets that.
You talk to this dude.
Yeah.
Once the conversation gets to this point and he proceeds past it, then what? What was he trying to get to? That's my issue.
By asking Vosh that?
Yes. What is his next? If we're thinking about this in terms of like a computer program,
I think that what he's getting at is that the kind of outrage that people have by somebody simply saying that like this age or that age is attractive does not really match the reality at which Vosh would expect the average person to have. It's not some crazy thing that's super rare, and so when people have this outrage, this is some super niche and rare thing that is almost never experienced.
Do you need to specifically define an age at which you think it's most common in order for you to effectively deliver the argument you just effectively delivered? My answer is no.
If the difference is between 14 and 17, yeah, probably.
Yeah, I just disagree.
So I don't know almost anybody who looks the same as when they're 14 as they do when they're like 25.
I'm not really interested in litigating the specific details of this.
But you asked me.
Yeah.
But that's my reason. Done. Okay. Well, just that would be why. If you can understand where I was going with it, then that would be the reason why the specific age would matter.
Attractiveness towards.
I understand the reason why that the age might matter to that question. I don't understand what the entire question or the framing device has to do with Mr. Girl's larger advocacy of increasing empathy for pedophiles when all this does is cast suspicion on him, how insistent he is to inject this into the conversation.
Well, I just told you. It's because if Vosh thinks that it is like 14 or 15 or 16 or 7, whatever it is, then it would go to say that if this would be the most popular one, then we're admitting that the way that we talk about these things is being like this weird rare niche thing that almost nobody has. It's like a super weird and unnatural thing at this age, which all of these ages are put into this category when people are talking about it. Then maybe we don't have to act. Maybe the main point is probably to allude to that when people talk about these things and they get really upset, a lot of it is actually performative.
From my perspective, the argument does not substantially differ whether you answer 14, 15, 16, or 17.
Sure.
It does not affect the position or in any way whatsoever. I would have, you know what I mean?
I guess I would have a really big difference in how I reacted.
Does it for you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if somebody said, "Hey, this chick's really hot," and I'm like, "Dude, they're 14, fucking chill." If they were 17, I'd be like, "Dude, they're 17, chill." All right, but I wouldn't be nearly as like, "What the fuck?" Because, like I said, a 17-year-old might look the same as when they're in their 20s. Like, I understand that you're just seeing a body that looks the same.
I think you should work on that because no, I'm not with you on that one.
You don't think that somebody can mistake a 17-year-old for somebody in their 20s based on how their body looks by mistake?
That's not what I said.
Oh, I don't understand what you're saying. That's why I'm asking a clarifying question. But I don't think that would ever happen with a 14-year-old, or it'd be exceptionally rare, and that would be way weirder to me, and I would be way more weirded out. As I think almost everybody would be. And that's why that would matter, I guess.
What number?
I think it would be somewhere
Do you not
from
want to answer
14.
this question?
No, I think it'd be somewhere from 14 to 17. I don't
Which
think
one?
we've changed.
Those are big. That's a big difference.
I have no idea, and I couldn't even begin to think by which categories I would separate them.
You know, I had a someone I knew who
just, if you're going to admit to any crimes, I would really rather not be listed in whatever federal reports are filed, so I would prefer it be done in a video on your stream, unrelated to my own.
No, there's no crime.
Huh.
No crimes.
Hopefully not, because it was kept in a sovereign state as opposed to the United States of America.
And I think that
that's a joke from Bosch, and I'm not laughing. Just from,
I think that
I'm not used anymore.
I think that this is probably the point to where Mr. Girl's just like offended, because like he said it the one time, and then he's like, I think if you say it the one time, like, okay, cool, but then like adding the sovereign state thing, it's just you're just kind of like shitting on him for talking about the conversation that was agreed to be talked about.
But the best answer he's going to get out of Bosch is the one that he's gotten, and if he's not interested in accepting that answer, it's not Bosch's problem.
Well, he didn't say I don't want to hear your story. He basically just said like, hey, I don't want to hear about your crimes, which is obviously a joke. But then by reiterating it right afterwards, saying like, I don't care if it's in a sovereign state, like, he's being shitty. So I think that this is like why Mr. Girl takes a different turn too.
Yeah, this takes place in the United States. It actually takes place in Beverly Hills. Wait, are you? Can I ask you some
I don't even think you recognize the joke.
Are you?
He recognized the insult.
Are you from Beverly Hills? I've heard this.
He's just trying to move forward, but he's
okay. But you don't live there.
I assume that he's not happy about it.
Because I worked in Beverly Hills for many years as a personal trainer. And so in the gym, you get to know people. People from different countries with different norms, and man, the shit they would say about high school girls and tell me like that if they could be with a girl of any age, if it was socially acceptable, it would be 15. It was like super like normal to them. It's very, very different from online discourse. Okay,
yeah, I think it's deeply unfortunate.
Yeah, I want to get to that in a second, but you're saying 14 to 17, and you won't pick a number?
I will absolutely not pick a number within the range.
Because you don't have a guess, or because you don't want to be clipped saying it?
Because I don't even know by what category you would distinguish into that group, and because I'm referring only to my feelings on other people's predilections, not to my own. So you're not asking me for my preference, you're asking me what I expect of the average American.
No,
a group of which I have a very low impression.
Okay,
Fair
but you
enough.
don't want to say the number.
I don't have a number. Do you have a number? Is there a number you're looking for?
I think it's 15.
Well, I suppose we'll leave it to the historians to judge.
Maybe 16. It might be. I think it would be 14 at first, and then it would move up once the novelty wore off. I think it would be 15 or 16.
Is this consideration in line with your desire to empathize with pedophiles, or is it something more personal than that?
And see, this is like another little jab at him.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, you sound like a pedophile, not a person who wants to promote empathy for socially misaligned people.
Why do I sound like a pedophile?
Because you're dedicating a considerable amount of thought to the subject of what type of underage girl people would be most interested in.
What color, if you had to guess what color their underwear would be, Vlash, what would you say?
Yeah.
You want to tell me why the fuck he would ever think that saying that would win him any points with anyone watching this?
I think that he's already understood that with Vosh making those jokes and then poking again, that anything positive has already gone. He's not going to garner any favor with Vosh's audience.
We've already acknowledged, for one, that usually debates don't do fucking diddly squat to convince one person of the other's position or whatnot.
Yeah, but our conversation about that.
Wait, excuse me. Your goal is to appeal to the audience, and what he just did there was lose the audience entirely in one fell swoop. VGGers do not always agree with Vosh. We established this earlier in that conversation. He had a real opportunity, a real exposure to a much larger platform that he was probably used to, and he squandered it.
Okay, so 1, he wasn't privy to our conversation. 2, he is not intimately familiar with Vosh's content. 3, it was effective. mrgirl did have a pretty large platform. He became quite a large streamer who was very successful, and his detriment had nothing to do with conversations like these. It had to do with him writing the Destiny report. This was entirely, singularly, the thing that took him from being a very financially successful, success by every metric in streaming, was because he went after Destiny. Had nothing to do with these kinds of things.
I don't fucking like Destiny, so as a VGGer, this conversation is what turned me against him. So I mean,
sure,
I don't really give a goddamn about Destiny or his community and what they think of mrgirl. I care about how he portrayed himself in this conversation, and he portrayed himself like an ass.
How he portrayed himself in this conversation also added to what launched his career, which was very successful. And I'm saying that the downfall of it, whether you liked this conversation or not, it did add to what became a very successful career, which was not taken down by conversations like this. It was built by conversations like this. So you can't say that he was ineffective at gaining an audience by doing this.
I said he lost this audience.
Sure, but in doing so, he gained a large audience. So he's trading a one-time audience approval for building his own.
As an advocate, I would think that you would be invested as cultivating as large an audience as possible and not shoving your entire in your mouth at the end of a debate to lose people who might have otherwise been sympathetic to your views.
Sure. I think that he wanted to do it in the way that worked for him, and it worked for him very well.
It sure did.
And for the audience member that he lost, he gained one, because I'm still a fan of his. Like he didn't appeal to you, but he did appeal to me. And there's no way to appeal to everybody.
Nor should you try to. Well, right. No, actually, no, you should. I was going to say, no, you should try to. If you believe that your position is morally sound and justified in advocating for, you should be trying to appeal to as wide an audience as possible, because it's a good thing to do that.
Sure. And I think that he did a good job with it, because he did have a really big career really shortly after this. He just took off like a rocket, man. Everybody wanted to talk to him. He made a ton of money. Like I said, by every metric of success, he was hitting it. And his community is probably some of the most informed people in the politics space about this subject.
I've spent more time on this video today than I have in the past 2. Are you all right to call it there?
Yeah, this is the end of it.
Yeah, no, and then it's just, I don't know if you're, yeah. My partner just texted me. I think I'm in trouble.
I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to get you in trouble, buddy.
Oh, do you realize we've been talking about this shit for 4 hours though? Holy fuck.
Yeah, I'm quite seasoned at this. I could talk about Mr. Grill all fucking night, buddy.
Probably used to that. Yeah. Well, anyways, yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the conversation. Sorry it got a little heated there.
Look, that's one thing you never have to worry about with me. If there's a problem between the conversation we have, it'll never come on my end. From my end, that's just how people get when you talk about things that are intense. I'm always fine with that. You
Well,
never
I
have to worry if
appreciate
I'm mad.
Well, I'll tell you, as an incredibly anxious person and someone with a history of like abuse, I will always worry about that sort of thing, but I appreciate the assurance.
And if I pick up on it, I'll reassure you because I get it.
You have a wonderful night, my guy.
You too. Peace out, homie.
Peace out.
Okay. That was pretty fun. I enjoyed that conversation quite a lot. Um, I am I'm pretty grateful that the big JC decided to watch this with me because when I first talked to him and I mentioned that I was a big Mr. Girl fan, he was like, what? I'm dramatizing it a bit, but we both had seen this, so I wanted to go over it with him to kind of see where he got where we like sort of differed because we have pretty similar opinions on a lot of things, and I could see very clearly when we were watching this where like he got really upset, and I get it. It's not that I don't understand at all. I think Mr. Girl made a lot of people upset with that one, especially since they weren't used to seeing him yet either. So they didn't even have like the context of like this guy's been around, that's how he is, or anything like that. Especially coming out of nowhere, that's probably pretty off-putting for most people. But I just thought it was funny and like good content. That's it for now. There's like a super small chance that I'll pick up the Mr. Girl Destiny stuff later tonight, but probably not until tomorrow. Yeah, I'm gonna go talk to my wife, see what's going on for the rest of the night.